War does not determine who is right, only who is left.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. It is good to be back with you again for another exciting episode of On the Move with Mac Worley. I, of course, am your host, Mac Worley III. I'm going to guide you through a series of interesting topics. Let's go ahead and break down our featured topics for this week. Today's episode, first and foremost, is titled, U.S. Declares Cyber War on Russia. This is episode 138 of our program, and first and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. I know you got a lot of options out there. I hope that if you're new to this program, you'll give us an opportunity to bend your ear on these topics. We're going to talk about Donald Trump, his movement surrounding him, how he gained popularity. I want to talk about the alt-right and kind of deconstruct this movement. In hour two, we're going to be joined by Jason Vely. He and I were going to talk about the election and the future of the liberty movement. Also, I need to give you guys a warning that the HSBC is giving a red alert that there is likely going to be a severe fall in the stock market. So we're going to cover that story in a little bit. I also in the later, I think the second or third hour of the show, I want to get into the tensions between Russia and the U.S. escalating. And I am going to ask the question, is war inevitable? And it's really rhetorical because, yes, it is. Yes, war is inevitable. We are going to end up in a conflict if we continue going down this path, and it seems like the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton are hell-bent on it. So then I want to cover a little bit of news that hasn't been getting a whole lot of play in the media recently. I want to talk about these leaked emails. There's been a lot of information coming out. Now, granted, we know that WikiLeaks is essentially a propaganda wing of Russia. We know this based on the software that has been seen in these hacks, and basically they have evidence that it is Russia. So. And then the systems that are being hacked, the information gained from those systems are being released through WikiLeaks. So it's somewhat disconcerting that we have Russia trying to play a major role in our elections. They have a preferred candidate, Donald Trump. Again, I argue. And again, you don't have to agree with me. We don't have to see eye to eye on this. If you're advocating for small government and you are throwing your vote to Donald Trump, no judgment. No judgment at all on my part. If we're working towards the same things, small government, limited government, checks and balances, states' rights, individual liberty, if we're all working towards those same things and we're on the same side, and we don't have to divide ourselves further. And this is not what I want for us. I don't want to make any new enemies. We've got enough enemies of liberty out there. I'm so sick of us getting played by these politicians. It's getting to the point where we're so divided, we can't come up with a consistent defense for our own rights. We keep arguing against ourselves because our candidate says this, X, Y, or Z. So we have to support him. We have to carry water because, yeah, he's wrong on this issue, but we can't show any cracks in the facade. So, look, we don't have to be enemies if we disagree. But when it comes to Donald Trump, he is a better option for the Russian government. He is, I argue, the chaos candidate. He's the burn the system down candidate. And if that's what you want, okay. All right. I mean, that's your opinion. I think it's a little ill-conceived. I'll want to push the pause button on that, pump the brakes just a wee bit. If we are to believe that we can burn this system down, and we could. The country is on fire already. We are being divided. battle lines are being drawn from the left to the right. And there's a lot of us that are caught in the middle. But if we're to believe that Donald Trump will burn down this quote-unquote rigged or corrupt system, if we're to believe this, then what's to follow? You know, I don't want to just sit here and think about right now. You know, let's plan ahead. Let's figure this out. What will happen next? And do we really believe that we're going to find ourselves back towards a more constitutional republic, or are we going to fall closer towards totalitarianism? That's really the ultimate question. What would happen if we decided to burn the system down? What are the consequences of those actions? Because I will remind you, the United States, our revolution, was the exception to the rule. There has never been another revolution throughout history that I am aware of. Please, if you can find one, please let me know. But I have never heard of an election that did not ultimately end in totalitarianism other than the United States. And many of you might even argue that, you know, it ultimately did end in totalitarianism. We have an imperial president just trying to, you know, pass laws from the presidency, you know, just executive orders, doing whatever. Well, we got a Supreme Court now that just going to create laws, legislate from the bench. That's apparently their job now. I mean, they've done it so many times that Obamacare might as well be called SCOTUS care. And we're losing. We're losing right now. So I think that we're kind of fooling ourselves, folks. I mean, based on the amount of people in this country that are actually informed on the issues, that can actually sit down and have a somewhat up-to-date conversation on the issues we face, other than Donald Trump's sexual assault, alleged sexual assault, who knows what happened, Hillary Clinton, all of her scandals. Again, it doesn't matter what we say about Hillary Clinton. I am firmly believing that there could be a video of Hillary Clinton eating a live baby and no one would care. And people would still vote for her because she's not Donald Trump. Where we are now is at a point where we're voting for our candidate not because we like the guy or girl, not because we really support their policy issues, not because we think that they're going to lead us to a brighter tomorrow. What we are doing now is voting for the other guy. We have to stop this guy, so I'm going to vote for anyone not that guy or girl. Doesn't matter who they are. I can't let that person become the president of the United States. And ultimately, again, as I've said from the beginning, you know, I want you to know I'm having a really difficult time maintaining civility. We've been talking about this. In last episode, we talked about civility. I'm just at the point right now where this election just doesn't matter. I know what's coming around the corner. We have some serious geopolitical and economic problems that are about to rear their ugly heads. And ultimately, the biggest loser of this election is going to be whoever wins and the American people. Because whoever wins, first of all, is going to be blamed for most of the problems. So whoever wins is actually going to find themselves in the hot seat. It's going to be really difficult for Hillary Clinton, for example, to blame the problems on the Republicans when Democrats have controlled the presidency for the last 8 years. So, and more, depending on when that happens. They've controlled the economic policies. Again, it's all going to come falling at Donald Trump's feet when he collapses the economy. I argue that if he does become president, his tariff policies alone will collapse the economy. But that's not to say much, because this economy is a house of cards. These are bubbles waiting to pop. So, I mean, it's a bad economic policy that'll set it off, but it's just waiting to blow up. So, if Donald Trump does somehow burn the system down, Remember, we were talking about that. I kind of went off into the weeds. If we do burn this system down, I suspect that it's going to end up and look more like the French Revolution than the American Revolution. We're different people. And you know, one of the things that I want to kind of point out, I've had some really interesting conversations lately with some of my anarchist friends, and they seem to be making a supremacy argument. One argument that I find to be completely illogical. I find it to be completely really ridiculous to think that we're better. Let me explain. We are a different people now than we were at the founding of this nation. People came here, first of all, to get away from persecution. People came here to, first and foremost, a lot of them came for religious liberty. They wanted to be able to practice their religion how they saw fit and not worry about their government coming in, throwing them into jail, telling them what God that they're going to have to worship. People came here for religious liberty. And the mindset of Americans during the founding, it was just, the hearts and minds had changed. People started to think radically different about their loyalty to the crown, to a government. People started to think about things in a philosophical way. People started to think about liberty. These topics started to change the hearts and minds of people. People actually were reading, for example, Thomas Paine. His pamphlets were in large part a big reason why the American hearts and minds changed. Now, I'm not saying that we couldn't get to that point, but I'm saying right now we're nowhere near where we were. We're losing this battle. The statists are winning. They are converting more people than we are. People who promote liberty. The statists are winning. No, I've argued that we're headed for a reset. This whole system that allows the statists to continue pumping out new statists, it's coming crashing down. And I argue that we shouldn't be anywhere near it. Those who love liberty, those who want to continue to promote small government policies, individual liberty, free market. If you want these things, don't do as I'm hearing a lot of my conservative friends talking about now with Obamacare, how it's dying. Obamacare is destroying a huge segment of our economy, and it's suffering from death gasps right now. And I'm hearing Republicans, conservatives talking about getting under the hood to fix Obamacare. What you do is you let these systems die out. You let the Republicans stay away from these kind of systems and let the Democrats take the blame. It's their baby. The freaking program is called Obamacare. Why would you want, first of all, to help them? Second of all, why would you want this system to even work? I don't. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong in that. I don't want Obamacare to work because the entire foundation rests upon redistribution of wealth. This system should fail. So I just don't see if we follow Donald Trump going down a path here of trying to destroy and maybe rebuild a rigged system. Now, granted, he says some things that I like, but it's all mired and mixed in with tons of other things that I don't. I happen to believe Donald Trump is a progressive. I happen to believe that he has some nationalist tendencies that I'm not particularly comfortable with. And I happen to believe that he's a big government guy. I mean, he is a massive big government guy. He's the crackdown candidate. He's the big tax candidate. He's the big government candidate. He's going to exponentially increase the government size and scope. And so will Hillary. It's just a matter of what they'll increase. So I don't think that burning down the system is a wise decision now, perhaps ever. I am advocating for working within the current system we have to cripple it, to get it to the point where the government can't do anything to you. Let the free market take over much of the responsibilities that the government has and let you live your life in peace. Again, this is why I advocate for voluntary taxes. I know a lot of people don't think that would ever work. I happen to disagree. But hey, you know what? We'll never know because nobody's listening to that idea. It's okay. But I happen to believe in the non-aggression principle. Don't hurt other people. Don't steal their stuff. And if I should live by that, so should my government, so should my representatives. They don't have a right. They don't have the authority to hurt people or steal their things, especially if those people aren't hurting others or stealing their things. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to dive right into the Donald Trump movement, the alt-right, and deconstruct this whole thing with a particularly interesting piece that was written on Claremont.org, written by John Marini. This is titled Donald Trump and the American Crisis. You guys do not want to go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mac Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bear Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, gang, thanks for sticking with us. If you made it this far in the program, first of all, thank you. Second of all, please share this out with your friends, your family, social media, all that good stuff. Help spread the message of liberty. Help get this program bigger and better in order for us to talk to more people, have a bigger conversation, engage with more people on these issues. I would certainly appreciate it. And while you're at it, don't forget to check us out at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. You can follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can get updates about our show when their shows are coming out from there. It also helps us analytically speaking, because the more people that are following us, the more people that will find us in search results. So please feel free to go ahead and follow us there. And don't forget to like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us on Twitter @OnTheMoveShow. Subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. Also, I would be remiss if I did not mention our shop on our homepage. Please check out OnTheMoveShow.com. Click the shop link. Lots of original design T-shirts, liberty-oriented merchandise for your viewing pleasure and purchasing pleasure if you'd like to. Those profits that we get from that kind of stuff, we're pumping it right back into the program. I'm buying, video cameras, mixers, microphones, cables, that kind of stuff for the show so we can continue producing better quality content for you guys to listen to. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive right in to the Donald Trump movement deconstructed. I found a extremely interesting article. Now, not everybody's going to agree, and it's cool. Again, we don't have to agree on everything. That's the beauty of liberty. But I think this has a lot of insight into the Donald Trump movement and perhaps even the alt-right. So, without further ado, this is on the Claremont.org. It's digitally exclusive online content here. And I went ahead and shared this out, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and share it right now on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can go ahead and follow me on this article if you'd like to, or read it on your own later. It's up to you. Sharing it right now. There we go. Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. All right, so this is called Donald Trump and the American Crisis by John Marini, dated July 22nd, 2016. Charles Kessler's essay, Trump and the Conservative Cause, is a model of conservative analysis. His moderate criticism of Donald Trump is surpassed only by his even more moderate defense of Trump. Kessler, of course, had little difficulty in deflating the most outlandish claims of Trump's critics, but he found it much harder to praise Trump. Like most contemporary political analysts, Kessler is well aware of the difficulty, if not the danger in some circles, of even defending Trump. Kessler is right to be wary. Trump has aroused more raw political passion than any candidate in recent memory. Since the end of the Cold War, American leaders have understood their offices in terms of global and administrative rule rather than political rule on behalf of the American people and the sovereignty of the American nation. Yet those whose offices were established on the foundation of the moral authority of the people and their Constitution, once elected or appointed, politicians and bureaucrats have utilized their will in both domestic and foreign policy in an unrestrained manner on behalf of bureaucratic rule. They govern on the implicit premise of elections as plebiscites, but it is no longer clear who confers the legitimacy of an electoral mandate. Bureaucratic rule has become so pervasive that it is no longer clear that government is legitimized by the consent of the governed. Now keep this in mind, folks. This is me talking. I'm not quoting the article here. This is one of the major parts that I want to talk about Donald Trump, about the elections being illegitimate. They're being rigged. The system being corrupt. You hear Donald Trump say every speech. I could play montage of everything he said with this. The election's rigged, rigged system, rigged. It's every clip that he talks about this. He's trying to get people to, again, I think this is almost like a sour grapes of him knowing there's a really large chance that he could lose. Again, if the election, if the system, if everything was so rigged, how did he become the nominee? If it was so rigged, how did they allow this to happen? I digress. The article continues. So, they were talking about the consent of the governed. Rather, it is the consent of the various national and often international social, economic, political, and cultural interest groups that determine the outcome of elections. True political rule requires, at a minimum, the participation of citizens in their own rule, even if not in the government itself. But this is possible only when people understand themselves as citizens and when the regime recognizes them as citizens. This requires distinguishing American citizens from all others and identifying them as one people. American elections have increasingly been framed by Washington professionals social scientists, media pundits, and policy professionals may tilt liberal or conservative and may differ in their party preferences, but they are united in their dependence upon intellectual authority derived from empirical science and its methodology, and in their understanding of politics and economics. At the same time, historicism, or critical theory, has established itself as the closest thing to a public philosophy when it comes to understanding history, society, and culture. Applied to elections, the empirical method required that politics be understood in terms of measurable and quantifiable aggregates. This proved compatible with the positivist understanding of law and interest group liberalism. Critical postmodern theory established personal autonomy and group diversity as central to what is morally defensible in terms of public policy. As a result, political partisanship and analysis has focused on race, class, gender, and other such demographics to provide the kind of information that has become central to shaping and predicting of elections, and to legitimize dividing the electorate into categories that came to be understood in moral terms. Consequently, political campaigns have made a science of dividing the electorate into groups and reassembling them as voting blocks committed to specific policies and issues denominated by the demographic categories themselves. This strategy requires a systematic mobilization of animosity to ensure participation by identifying and magnifying what it is that must be opposed. Appeals to the electorate are strategically controlled by the experts. Which issues are allowed to be raised seems to be more important than the manner in which they are packaged and sold to the electorate. So this is talking about the dividing of America, breaking us down into these little groups, especially when we're talking about single-issue voters. You know, people who may, for example, only care about abortion rights, or people who want, fair pay for women. Again, they're talking about the myth of the gender wage gap, or various other things. You know, even among the alt-right, that has broken down into a specific demographic, or even, and I'm not necessarily saying that it's divided down by race, but it's people proposing, in many cases, certain policies. One being building a wall. So if you are advocating for building the wall, then you're going to vote for Donald Trump because you fall within that demographic. So it continues. The article continues. Understood in this way, what is central to politics and elections is the elevation of status of personal and group identity to something approaching a new kind of civil religion. This is about to blow your mind, I believe. So, individual social behavior, once dependent on traditional morality and understood in terms of traditional values and vices, has become almost indefensible when judged in light of the authority established by positivism and historicism. Public figures have come to be judged not as morally culpable individuals, but by the moral standing established by their group identity. Character is almost unrecognizable and no longer serves as the means by which people can determine the qualifications for public office of those they do not know personally. As a result, it is difficult to establish the kind of public trust that made it possible to connect public and private behavior, or civil society and government. When coupled with the politicization of civil society and its institution, the distinction between the public and the private sector, or the personal and the political, has almost disappeared. Anything and everything can become politicized. We're seeing that, by the way, in this election. We're talking more about sexual misconduct from a presidential candidate and a former president that is married to a presidential candidate. This is what we've devolved the conversation down to. The article continues. But things can only be understood and made intelligible or made politically meaningful when viewed through a lens of social science and postmodern cultural theory. In short, the public and private character of American politics has been placed in the hands of academic intellectuals. Now, this is interesting here because we're talking about the social sciences and how this plays into the academic intellectual's hands. Kessler focuses on his defense of Trump on the observation that Trump alone has succeeded in making political correctness a political issue. Kessler knows that political correctness poses a problem not only for politics, but for intellectual life as well. That it is a problem for the university as well as for civil society, regardless of his motives. Therefore, Trump has gone to the heart of the matter and made a political issue of these intellectual social crises. Trump has not attempted a theoretical justification for doing so. That remains to be made by the thinkers. Such a justification begins by recognizing that when progressivism was confident of itself, it understood the past as rational and as providing light for the way to a glorious future. When progressive intellectuals lost confidence in the idea of progress and Enlightenment reason, they abandoned the hope of a future and began to revise the meaning of the past. When I'm assuming this is Nietzsche, I think spelled really really weird. I've never seen Nietzsche written. When Nietzsche analyzed the malady posed by historicism's abandonment of its rationality, he came to the realization that the excess of history has attacked the plastic powers of life. It no longer understands how to avail itself of the past as hearty nourishment. The politics of our time is dependent upon how we avail ourselves of the past, whether as hearty nourishment or as life-threatening poison. So, the way I look at this here, this paragraph, I think that he's talking about, and we can relate a lot of this to how progressivisms have started to reinterpret the past. And that's really calling it a very nice name. I would call it, moreover, whitewashing the past, completely looking at things from a point of America is wrong, America is evil. How can we denounce America today? And again, I think that's largely how the Obama administration feels, as why I believe that they've pulled back American forces or American influence around the world. Again, that has created the power vacuum, which we are seeing now lead to Russian aggression. We're seeing, again, Iran even becoming more aggressive. We're seeing the world start to look towards the East now rather than the West for guidance or the West for support. Now they're looking at places like Russia. And I believe it's going to get worse. I believe we're going to see more of our historic allies start to lean harder on the East, like Russia and China. But I digress. The article continues. Postmodern intellectuals have pronounced their historical judgment on America's past, finding it to be morally indefensible. Every great human achievement of the past, whether in philosophy, religion, literature, or the humanities, came to be understood as a kind of exploitation of the powerless. Rather than allowing the past to be viewed in terms of its aspirations and accomplishments, it has been judged by its failures. The living part of the past is understood in terms of slavery, racism, and identity politics. Political correctness arose as a practical and necessary means of enforcing this historical judgment. No public defense of past greatness could be allowed to live in the present. Public morality and public policy would come to be understood in terms of the formerly oppressed. So this is what we hear all the time. This is why, by the way, there's an article here I was going to read last week, but I decided to end the show short. They're now attacking Columbus Day. The left, by the way, Marxists, they're attacking Columbus Day. And they want to replace it with Indigenous Peoples Day, because they feel that Columbus Day in itself represents essentially the embodiment of imperialism, American imperialism, and again the exploitation of indigenous people around the world. This is so we shouldn't be proud of any of our historical achievements. Again, the greatest single achievement in human history is American capitalism. The single greatest achievement. It gave people free markets, gave us the ability to pursue our own destiny, to change our own future, to lift ourselves out of poverty. And as a result, more people have been lifted out of poverty than any other economic system created thus far. And the proof is in the pudding. Just look at the differences between communist Russia and America. Look at the difference between how we have thrived and the rest of the freaking world. But we're supposed to feel bad. We're supposed to focus on all the negative things, which again, they were bad. Slavery was terrible. It was an abhorrent practice. But you know what? Many of our founders were fighting it from the very beginning. Many of our founders, Benjamin Franklin included, were trying to actually abolish slavery before this nation even began. But yet we don't hear that conversation. All we hear is that every single one of our founders were slaveholders and that they were evil, which is not accurate, first of all. Not every single one of them were slaveholders. And then they go after Thomas Jefferson about how he never let go of his slaves. He never freed his slaves. Even George Washington freed his slaves. This is the argument that they make. And they completely gloss over the fact that Virginia law, when Thomas Jefferson was dying, actually made it illegal for him to free his slaves. And Thomas Jefferson is on record fighting against slavery. And many of Thomas Jefferson's slaves were, in fact, inherited. So he couldn't release his slaves, even if he wanted to. The law actually prevented him. And in fact, George Washington was prevented by Virginia law from freeing his slaves. And he only freed them upon his death because that was the loophole, which was later closed. So, again, this is not a black and white issue. This is... excuse me for the pun, that wasn't intended. There is a lot of gray when it comes to this, and this was the issue of their time. They were facing many issues at the time, and rather than facing that now and risk destroying the nation, the Union at the time, they decided to put it on the back burner and hope that they could take it down piecemeal, piece by piece, and hopefully eventually it would go away and they wouldn't have to worry about it. Unfortunately, it led to a bloody civil war, which ultimately freed slaves. So this is a story of human triumph. This is a story of liberty. It's also a story of why it might not necessarily be a good idea to compromise on what we believe in and to push off fights for later. But that's a whole nother conversation. So let's go back to this article here. In this light, it is not surprising that Trump is seen not only as the enemy of political correctness, but as the enemy of those whose intellectual lives have been shaped by positivism and historicism. Trump is not an academic or an intellectual. He seems to understand politics in an old-fashioned way. He appeals to the people as citizens and Americans on the assumption that the people establish the legitimacy of parties and elections. He rejects the authority of the professionals and insists that he is interested in unifying the country. He claims to do so by appealing to a common good. Of course, it is not easy to appeal to a common good when so much of the country has come to understand itself in terms of its diversity. In such a time, an appeal to American citizenship is itself almost a revolutionary act because it requires making a distinction between citizens and all others. Along the same lines, Trump has appealed to the rule of law and has attacked bureaucratic rule as the rule of privilege and patronage on behalf of socioeconomic, foreign policy, and political elites. This appeal is made difficult by the fact that the administrative state has fragmented, isolated, and infantilized the people by undermining or destroying the institutions of civil society In these terms, the successes of Trump's campaign will depend upon the American people's ability to still recognize the existence of a common or public good. We're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, I want to finish up with the rest of this article. It has a whole lot for us to digest. I think it makes some extremely relevant points, and the analysis is spot on. You guys do not want to miss what's coming up next. And don't forget, in about 20 minutes, we're going to be joined by Jason Vely of youthrevolt.org. Again, youthrevolt.org. We're on their network now. Please feel free to show those guys some love. We'll be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mac Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bare Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latoshaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. If you're just tuning in, we're breaking down this very interesting article written by John Marini of Claremont.org. I posted it on my Facebook, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. The analysis on this article titled Donald Trump and the American Crisis. I think it's bar none. Honestly, this is looking at civil society, how we got to this point, and how Donald Trump has managed to build a movement. So, let's continue the article. Since local politics and administration came to be centralized within the administrative state, elections have provided the people their only possibility of participation in public life. Politics at state and local level, along with private institutions of civil society, took on a new face after administration was centralized. It wasn't long before the brightest and most ambitious college faculty and graduates began gravitating to Washington, D.C., the new center of economic, social, and political decision-making. It's very similar to how, by the way, this is me speaking, very similar to how elites gravitated towards Rome, the city of Rome, in ancient Roman days. So the power, as it begins to centralize, attracts more and more of these elites. So anyway, let's see, where were we? Sorry, I lost my place. In turn, the federal government and bureaucratic apparatus became dependent upon the intellectual elites to provide expertise. But what to do with people who participate in politics only as citizens? In terms of elections, the old partisans of both parties, the party pros, who had devoted their life to trying to understand politics in terms of mobilizing the people, were no longer needed once partisan appeals could be marketed like any other commodity. both political parties have benefited from the kind of predictability made possible by the incorporation of scientific professionalism in the organizing and shaping of campaigns and elections. In addition, both parties have participated in recognizing the legitimacy of the cultural narrative established by postmodern theory and enforced by political correctness as the ground of understanding civil society, public policy, law, and the bureaucracy itself. Before the end of the 20th century, contemporary politics had created an equilibrium agreed on by both parties and underwritten by the intellectual authority of positivism and historicism. This equilibrium has functioned as a new kind of iron law of politics. There are red states and there are blue states, and there are a handful of purple or battleground states. Political conflict could be contained by focusing on the latter. Elections were understood in terms of division rather than unification. And it became almost impossible for any candidate to appeal to the electorate on behalf of a common good. That is not surprising because positivism and historicism had rejected any understanding of the meaning of common good. Modern American politics had become intelligible only from the perspective of positivist social science and postmodern historicism or progressivism, both of which begin and end with interest group diversity and individual autonomy. Trump appears to have understood that the political parties no longer establish a meaningful link between the people and the government. Now keep this in mind. This is very important. If Trump has in fact understood that political parties no longer establish a meaningful link between the people and the government, if that's actually true, what does that mean for the future of the liberty movement? What are we to do if these parties are as detached as I believe they are? The first job of a politician, the first goal, their first concern is getting reelected. That's all they care about. The vast majority of them. Again, I don't trust politicians, and I also am not a party person. I don't particularly like the idea of political parties, because once you start to organize a political party, people in the power structure of that party only want to keep their power. Anyway, the article continues. Party patronage has been replaced by bureaucratic patronage, and a professional elite has established itself as the vital center between the people and the government. The authority of that elite cannot be understood simply in terms of social, economic, and even political power. What unites the vital center, what establishes its prominence and legitimizes its public authority, is knowledge. Members of the vital center understand the world through their attachment to these professions: academia, science, economics, business, media, entertainment, and even religion. They often lack political consciousness of themselves as a class. Many of them do not even think of themselves as political. Their interest and loyalty is to what it is they profess to study, and what they think they know. And what establishes their intellectual and political authority is their production of what is seen as useful knowledge in the administrative state. Indeed, it could be said that without the policy sciences, the administrative state would be almost impossible to operate. That's an interesting thought. Without these political sciences, could the state operate in the way it is right now? It's very interesting. It continues. It is the technical requirement of modern administrative state that have made it possible to politicize the elites in a manner that disguises their political role. When nearly every social, economic, scientific, religious, and political problem is decided in a bureaucratic or legal way, and always from a central authority, usually Washington, but sometimes New York, or one or two other places, the professional elites are given a stake in the political and bureaucratic world. Trump has apparently refused to acknowledge the authority of this policymaking establishment, and in doing so has perplexed nearly all of the public intellectuals. both liberal and conservative, and refusing to allow the established vital center to mediate the political debate. He has gone directly to the people, and so doing, he has made it nearly impossible for the vital center to condone or even attempt to understand, let alone praise, his candidacy. In a popular election, a rousing rhetorical defense of a political candidate is nearly impossible when those who have held political offices and attained social respectability are unable to praise the candidate. In the attempt to evaluate Trump, liberals have judged him from the perspective of postmodern culture, labeling him a reactionary racist, a nationalist, a xenophobe. Conservatives have not objected to this postmodern characterization of Trump. They have simply tried to add a conservative twist by seeking to revive old language of character, virtues, and vices, as though this language still has a public or political meaning. Unable to politicize the language that no longer resonates even with the libertarian or economic conservatives, their moral judgments could only be interpreted in terms of self-interest, a concept still relevant in contemporary discourse. This was not always the case in American politics. A political discourse once existed that understood itself in terms of principles of public right, and the stewards of public office were once judged by nonpartisan standards that presuppose virtues such as honesty, integrity, character, and honor. It was an agreement on the need for such virtues that made it possible to entrust those offices to political partisans and to distinguish theoretical and practical reason or prudence. While it was possible to agree on abstract principles, it was also possible to disagree on the practical way those principles were to be accommodated with respect to contemporary circumstances. Policymaking was not understood in terms of expertise, nor had technical knowledge replaced the prudential judgment of the politician. Moreover, a public language still existed that made it possible to agree on what kind of public or private behavior was praiseworthy or blameworthy. But that old language was dependent upon a reasonable and objective understanding of virtue and vice. Remember us talking last week about reasonable people? A lot of what this author is talking about right now is political correctness and the control of language that the left has managed to seize. They shout you down when you say something that whatever they feel like being outraged about today, whether or not you're talking about, you're calling somebody who is transgender. They don't want you to say transsexual or whatever other words that they are shouting you down for today. Again, control of language, very specific. It has a very specific effect. And control of the culture has had a very specific effect through media and, moreover, through education. Political correctness has permeated through both, and this is me speaking, both education and media. It's changed the language. It's changed the way that we think. Pretty soon it will change whether or not we even think. The article continues. But that old language was dependent upon a reasonable and objective understanding of virtue and vice. Such language eludes us in an age when subjective values have replaced public and private virtue, and when principles are merely subjective policy preferences that are defined and defended simply by being non-negotiable. Although it was easy to blame Trump for politicizing the personal by ridiculing those who seek and hold public office, this was his way of connecting with people who had become mere spectators, not citizens, when it comes to Washington politics. Perhaps he did so because there had been no honest evaluation of Washington that originated in Washington. No policy ever really fails. Private corruption never arises to the level of public corruption, let alone is punished. No office holder of significance has been personally responsible for their behavior since Watergate. Ironically, it has taken a reality television star, one who knows the difference between the real and the imagined, to make reality a political issue with respect to Washington. Indeed, in recent years, Washington has presented itself as a kind of reality show. It is difficult to distinguish what is real from the way it is spun. Benghazi was just one example of the unwillingness of the Washington establishment to denounce deception in political matter. Trump was willing to denounce the deception by passing personal judgment on those policies, personalities, and issues, and he was willing to judge them as personally accountable. Moreover, Trump is understood personally and not politically because he has never held political office. He is primarily vulnerable to criticism on the ground of his personal behavior, one leading aspect of which is a lack of respect for office seekers and office holders and their policy. As a result, it has become difficult to judge Trump politically or in terms of the past. In short, Trump cannot be properly evaluated in political terms. It is not surprising, therefore, that few are willing or able to praise Trump in an unqualified manner, insofar as Trump has refused to walk on paths beaten by others. As Machiavelli would say, he has all those who benefit from the old orders as enemies, and he has lukewarm defenders and all those who might benefit from the new orders. But it is not fear of adversaries alone that makes it difficult to bring about change. Machiavelli writes, but the incredulently I can't say this word either, of men who do not truly believe in new things unless they come to have a firm experience of them. In our post-Machiavellian age, who is open to every kind of novelty, we are faced with a new kind of incredulity. I can't say this word. I'm having a hard time, folks. Sorry. One that prevents men from believing in old things of which they no longer have any experience. It has become far easier for modern man to accept change as something normal, almost natural. What has become difficult to understand, let alone preserve, are things that are unchanging or eternal. History, understood in terms of the ideas of progress in politics, economics, science, and technology, has made change or the new seem almost inevitable. As a result, the desire for the newness has become almost irresistible. This is what I warned in the beginning of the show. I warned you about some kind of new revolution, an alt-right revolution. I warn of this because we're whitewashing the past, we're not educated, and we don't have control, the conservatives or the liberty movement, we don't have control of the culture. We don't have influence in the culture. The left does. The Marxists do. The article continues. When Lincoln was faced with the dilemma of understanding what must be preserved and what can be changed, he had to come to grips with the meaning of conservatism. He did so at a time when not only the understanding of the unchangeable, that is to say, self-evident truth, but also its political meaning had been denied. And Lincoln, who was charged by his enemies with being a revolutionary, did not defend himself as a conservative. He noted in his Cooper Union speech, "You say you are conservative, eminently conservative, while we are revolutionary, destructive, or something of the sort. What is conservatism? Is it not adherence to the old and tried against the new and untried? We stick to, contend for, the identical old policy on the point in controversy, which was adopted by our fathers who framed the government under which we live, while you, with one accord, reject and scout and spit upon that old policy and insist upon substituting something new." Lincoln noted that his opponents were unanimous in their defense of the new, despite their disagreement concerning what the new policy should be. True, you are disagreeing among yourself as to what the substitute shall be, he said. You are divided on new proposition and plans, but you are unanimous in rejecting and denouncing the old policy of the fathers. Is not contemporary understanding of politics as made intelligible only in terms of historicism the modern confirmation of the fact that there is a general agreement between liberals and conservatives because both have rejected the old policy of the fathers, that is, natural rights itself? In contemporary politics, both liberals and conservatives are necessarily open to the new. But in many of the most important ways, they have rejected the old policies of the fathers. True conservatives have not yet seen fit to denounce the fathers. But how much of the legacy of the fathers do they still find defensible? Lincoln was aware that only proper defense of the tried and true of tradition was a defense of the unchanging principles of political right in terms of an unchanging human nature. This presupposed a distinction between theoretical and practical reason, which made it possible to distinguish unchanging principles from policies that must change according to circumstances. This understanding assumed the benevolence of nature and nature's God, as well as the capacity of human reason to comprehend and oppose those rational limits on human freedom that are necessary to ensure human happiness. It is only if the old can be defended as the good of conservatism, or the tried and true can remain a living thing. The historicist understanding of freedom purports to reveal that nature itself is tyrannical, and has attempted the self-destruction of philosophic reason by liberating the creative individual from the chains imposed by nature and reason. So we're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Jason Vely. We're going to talk about this election. We're going to talk about the future of the liberty movement. And after I end the call with him, we're going to continue breaking down this article. And we've got a lot of other featured topics to get to. Again, today I want to talk about the alt-right, Donald Trump, deconstruct that movement. Also, we're going to get to a red alert given by HSBC saying that we're going to have a severe fall in the stock market. In the third hour, we're going to talk about tensions between Russia and the United States, how they're escalating. Is war inevitable? Then we're going to get to the leaked WikiLeaks emails that concern Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and George Soros. You do not want to go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mac Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bear Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
This is Dan Sandini of DaylightDisinfectant.com, citizen journalist, friend of the late Andrew Breitbart, and cohort of James O'Keefe. I listen to On the Move with Mac Worley because the only time he's wrong is when he disagrees with me.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, MacPack, we're back. If you want to join today's conversation, you can give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. You can message us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Get us on Twitter @OnTheMoveShow. And at this point, we are joined by Jayson Veley of YouthRevolt.org. I'm really excited to have him on the show. Big fan. How's it going, Jason?
Mac, it's going great. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh man, first of all, I'm a fan, man. I've listened to probably about a dozen of your episodes so far. I'm really, I don't agree with everything you say, but I think you got a good head on your shoulders, man. And I'm really interested to see what you do, especially considering you're a young conservative. If you could give a little bit of background on on yourself to my listeners, just so they know who you are, and also feel free to drop any of your social media, website, all that good stuff, so people know where to find you.
Of course. Yeah. Well, thanks again so much for having me. It's great to talk to you, Mac. I'm a fan of your show as well. You do a great job. You're a great host. And a passionate and powerful voice, I'd say, for the young liberty movement. But yeah, as far as my background goes, I started getting involved in politics during really my freshman year of high school, actually. So I've been at it for about 8 or 9 years now. And I had this friend my freshman year of high school named Connor. And Connor, he was more involved in politics than I was. He knew a little bit more about conservatism and what that whole thing meant. And so I would just talk to him, in class and kind of ask him questions about it. And really through Connor and my father, actually, I started, learning more about conservatism, what it meant to be a conservative. I remember, in the early days of high school, I would come home from school, and my father would be sitting in the living room, and he'd be watching the news. And he'd be screaming his head off at the television because they'd have some kind of idiot host on or some kind of guest, and my dad would just get so frustrated. And I'd sit there, and I'd observe, and I try to follow along the best I could. And just over time, it just kind of got more and more interesting to me, and I started being more vocal with my opinions. I started out in television, actually doing a local access show, and then I switched over to radio. And now I have a nonprofit media organization called Youth Revolt, which is a network that basically seeks to give young conservatives and libertarians, liberty-minded individuals, a platform to speak out and try to fight to take this country back and take our future back. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yes, sir. So youthrevolt.org, that's where people can find you,
correct.
Right?
Correct.
Cool.
Yep, and you're on there too, Mac. We got you on the schedule too, and you're a powerful voice with us.
Yes, sir. Well, I really do appreciate you guys giving me that opportunity. So,
of course, I
want to talk for a moment here about. I want to get into the election in a second and your thoughts on the future of the liberty movement, but I kind of want to focus here for a moment, if you don't mind, on what you think about this election before we start really diving into the meat of this election. Have you been a supporter of Trump? What are you thinking?
Supporter, no. Voter, yes. I think there's a difference. I think that I've never been one to throw my full support behind Donald Trump. I think he has many flaws. As a matter of fact, I don't think he's a conservative at all. But as I've said, particularly over the last couple weeks on my radio show, I will be voting for him in November because I want to stop Hillary Clinton. As it stands right now, he is the only one in position to stop Hillary Clinton. And so that's kind of my reason behind this. But, this election in general, I just think has been kind of crappy, for lack of a better word. It's just been... I was early on. I was a Ted Cruz supporter. Mm-hmm. I also liked Rand Paul. We had so many good candidates, Mac, in the primaries, and then we got stuck with Donald Trump. And it really, it's unfortunate because honestly, if it had been a Ted Cruz or a Rand Paul or one of these guys going up against Hillary Clinton, they'd be up by double digits right now. I truly believe that. But we have Donald Trump, who unfortunately can't articulate the conservative message, can't articulate, the message of liberty and freedom. That's not to say he doesn't have some good ideas, but he can't articulate, our founding. He can't articulate what it is that we stand for, and that's the problem. That's why he's at where he's at right now. I think if he were able to articulate better and understood our message and our movement better, there's no way Hillary Clinton would be this close and even up in some polls. So this election has just been a disaster, in my opinion.
Do you think that the state of this election is a reflection on us?
To an extent, I want to be careful with when I say us, because I know a lot of people who didn't support Donald Trump and still don't support Donald Trump, but I think that Donald Trump is where he is at right now because he did tap into an anger and a deep, a frustration within the Republican Party. There's a lot of people out there who are just completely ticked at the mainstream media, basically controlling the narrative, and they're ticked off at the Republican leadership too, who has failed time and time again to advance what we want. And I think Trump was able to connect with those kinds of people. Unfortunately, I think that anger that a lot of people were feeling, and that anger that led to their support of Donald Trump, it kind of blocked out or made them ignore a lot of other things that are also equally as important when choosing a candidate. Like, can they articulate our message? Do they understand the threats of progressivism? Donald Trump does not, but we had so many people in this country overlook those very, very important factors, and I think that was a big mistake, Mac.
Well, I definitely agree. I said during the primary that a vote for Donald Trump in the primary was a vote for Hillary Clinton in the general. Mm-hmm. I warned about this, and it's one of the reasons why we're here. And I agree. People were mad, and people were mad at the establishment. You're right. People were angry at the leadership of the GOP and anybody connected to it. And Donald Trump appeared to be an outsider candidate that didn't represent the establishment. I think we had a lot of other great choices that weren't necessarily entrenched in the establishment. Again, that's why I supported Ted Cruz, or at least I would have voted for him. I wasn't out endorsing him, but I do believe that he represented a good outsider candidate because he himself has been fighting the GOP his entire time. Fought for states' rights. I just find it interesting that this movement has the Donald Trump movement, alt-right, have lumped him into the category of globalists and the like that when he's been fighting for that. But regardless, one question I actually have, because one of the things that Donald Trump has been talking about this whole election is how the system is rigged, how the election's going to be rigged, and I warned, and I know other talking heads out there warned about the same thing, that Donald Trump, if we voted for him in the primary, he was going to get destroyed in the general by the media, and we predicted it, we expected it, we knew it was coming. It seems like the only person that didn't know it was coming was Donald Trump, and he's somehow, he's making a big deal about it. Yes, media bias, left-wing media bias is a real big problem, but it's something we face every year, and we know it's going to come. To me, it seems like an overreaction from the Trump campaign to continue harping on the media bias. Do you buy into this, or what's your thoughts on the rigged election?
Well, here's the thing. When it comes to Donald Trump, everyone likes, especially his diehard supporters, they like to say, well, Donald Trump, he drops the hammer on the left. He drops the hammer on the media. He mops the floor with Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump, he is thick-skinned. The truth is, Donald Trump has extremely, extremely thin skin. He does. That's just a fact. And what unfortunately that leads to is whenever he's attacked or threatened by anyone in the media, he spends the next 3, 4, 5 days defending himself. It's this constant need from Donald Trump to defend himself from these attacks. We saw it. He was going after Ted Cruz right after he won the nomination for about 2 or 3 days, attacking him because Cruz, at least initially, refused to endorse him. We saw Donald Trump going after that individual who spoke at the DNC. I believe his name was Mr. Khan. I can't remember his first name. But that guy who attacked Donald Trump, Trump felt the need to defend against him. And even before that, in the primaries, when Donald Trump should have been, staying on message and focusing on Hillary Clinton and, winning the country back, he was in a week and a half, 2 week long feud with Megyn Kelly. The guy can't focus. That's the problem. And I know Donald Trump, I think it was last week, said, thankfully the shackles are coming off now. I'm free. I think that was one of his tweets. And I went on radio and I said, all right, I can see why that could be good, but at the same time, does unshackled Donald Trump mean unfocused Donald Trump? Unfortunately, I think the answer is yes. When Trump doesn't focus, when he buys into this, these attacks from the media, he goes off course and he spends way too long, in my opinion, trying to defend himself, and that's one of his deepest flaws.
Yeah, well, I would definitely agree. One thing I found interesting, especially with this the shackles have been taken off tweet that came from Trump as he essentially declared war on the GOP. I find it kind of interesting because his whole campaign has been about that he's not restrained, he's not part of the establishment, and now the shackles have been taken off. Apparently, was he restrained before? Do you feel like he was cozying up to the establishment? I think he was, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think he was. I think. Look, I don't think Donald Trump knows who Donald Trump is at this point. I think Donald Trump is he spent his campaign trying different things. You're right. He was the anti-establishment candidate at first, and then he seemed to get more presidential, quote unquote. He seemed like he was almost being controlled by the Republican establishment, and he did. I think Donald Trump honestly is, even though he paints himself as this outsider, I do think he's a quasi establishment figure. I do, because the guy, remember, he endorsed that Renee Elmers, who is a rhino, for lack of a better word. He endorsed John McCain. He endorsed Kelly Ayotte from New Hampshire. All these establishment candidates, and I was on the radio saying, if Trump is this big Washington outsider, like everybody says he is, why is he going around endorsing Washington insiders? What's that all about?
Yeah.
But now, of course, he's saying the shackles are coming off. So it's, again, this roller coaster ride with Trump. I don't think Donald Trump knows at this point who Donald Trump is. And if he wins in November, which I have my doubts about, trust me, but if he wins, it's going to be interesting to see the kind of president he is. Is he going to be, this outsider figure, or is he going to fall in line like we've seen before?
So your perspective here, because and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you're planning on voting for Donald Trump to stop Hillary Clinton, do you believe that Donald Trump would be better than Hillary Clinton?
I do. I do. I think that I know there are a lot of people out there who say, look, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are the same, and in some areas they might be quite similar. I mean, Donald Trump, for example, goes around talking like Bernie Sanders when it comes to trade, talking like Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton when it comes to, for example, raising the minimum wage. These are concerns that I have. But as a whole, I believe that Donald Trump has some good ideas, and Hillary Clinton doesn't have any good ideas. And so, I'm not one of these people who think that Donald Trump would necessarily be as bad as Hillary Clinton. No.
So, this is where we disagree. I personally, I just don't think that Donald Trump is even remotely conservative. I don't think he's advocating for less government. I think that he's said himself to be a redistribution of wealth candidate. He's for single payer health care. He's anti-free market. He's pro tariffs and things like that. Again, these are all things that are going to come failing in the future. So let's focus here on the future, because I feel like a lot of my conservative friends are focused so heavily on this moment and not looking too far down the line. And I'm how old are you, by the way?
I'm 22 years old.
22. Okay, so we're both conservatives. I'm 31. I'm at the tail end of the at the millennials. We're both millennials. I'm at the tail end of the millennial generation here. But I'm just looking at what will happen with a Trump presidency, and my biggest concern is the aftermath. I'm of the opinion that we're headed for an economic collapse of biblical proportions. This is about to all come crashing down, and first and foremost, whoever is elected president, it's going to fall at their feet. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I agree.
Okay,
I agree.
So, in relation to millennials, how Donald Trump is being presented, by the biased media, we do know that the mainstream media is extremely anti-Republican. It doesn't matter who's running. We know that the media is going to spin for the left, for the Marxists, the Marxists out there. But my concern is how Donald Trump is being portrayed as the crony capitalist, big rich guy who's always out to screw somebody else. This is how he's portrayed in the media, and the fact that if the economy comes collapsing down after, let's say, he implements some kind of tariffs, do you think that's going to detrimentally affect the liberty movement?
Here's the thing. I think to an extent it would, for sure. But that's why if Donald Trump gets elected, we need to hold his feet to the fire. One of the things that I've been very, very passionate about is, I've repeated over and over and over again, Trump is not a conservative. Trump is not a conservative. I can't say it enough. And we, people like you and me who are liberty-minded people, we have to repeat that over and over and over again. Let people know, look, Trump is not a conservative. He's not a conservative. One of my biggest concerns about this election, Matt, especially if Trump wins, look how he's redefining what it means to be a conservative in this country. Look at all these people. I know so many people out there who used to believe in true free market systems, and they were completely against the minimum wage hike. Now all of a sudden, because Trump comes along and he's proposing these things, they're all for it. And as a result, what we see is a bunch of once conservatives kind of moving left. And the problem with that is they're not calling themselves, centrist or moderate Republicans. They're still calling themselves conservatives. In effect, redefining what it means to be a conservative. We cannot let that happen. We have to maintain the true definition of conservatism, and that starts, I think, by continuously repeating the fact that, look, Trump is not a conservative. He's just not.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I absolutely agree that we have to continue repeating it. But to be honest, I don't believe – I think the damage is already done, first of all. I don't believe that even if Donald Trump does lose, the conservative movement is going to be saved. I think that the brand has already been tainted, and in my opinion, and this is just where I've found myself now, I happen to believe that we should rebrand ourselves entirely underneath the same principles, but give ourselves another name, because I think that when millennials hear the word conservative, they think of like old stuffy white billionaires who want to tell people what they can do in their bedroom and are racist. This is the idea that the image that they've constructed from years and years and years of listening to the biased media, but now it's even more cemented into this mindset now to where that is what conservatism is. I think that if we're debating about what conservatism is within our own party, this is already lost. This game, it's lost. We've already divided ourselves, and again, even if Trump loses, I argue that we're in some real trouble right now, because the alt-right is rising, and it is a new movement that is happening within the Republican Party, and it's being embraced by the GOP, just like Black Lives Matter is being embraced by the left. These are they're parallel movements. They are a response to each other and a response to the system. And I personally just think we're getting to the point of no return when it comes to conservatism, because we don't control the culture. We don't have an influence on the narrative like Donald Trump does as a media icon, and as many people within our own party are falling in line with this redefining of conservatism. Again, Donald Trump's calling for a bigger stimulus, double the size of the stimulus than Hillary Clinton. This is not conservative, and I absolutely agree with you. But what do you think about a rebrand? Do you think that that's even something we could pull off?
I mean, rebrand it how? Just give it a new name? Is that what you mean?
I say, in my opinion, I don't think that the GOP is worth saving. I think that this is over. This whole two-party system, the way it is now, it's over. Especially in the aftermath of Donald Trump loses. I think that there's already plans in the works from the alt-right to start basically causing havoc inside the GOP, start electing their alt-right candidates, and basically opposing any kind of GOP incumbent or anybody linked even remotely, or not even remotely, just accused of being linked to the establishment, quote unquote establishment. So I think that it's time for a new party. I think that the Republican Party has fallen in line essentially historically with the Whig Party, and it's over, in my opinion. What do you think?
Well, we have to be really, really careful if we're going to kind of start a new party, because as it stands right now, Mac, whether you like it or not, and I see where you're coming from, I really do, the Republican Party, as it stands, is the only vehicle that exists to at least get someone into the White House or Congress with right of center ideas. At least some right. There's if we were to, I mean, look at what's happening to Gary Johnson, for example. There's no way he could beat out anyone who runs for the Republican Party. Even what's his name? Who's running? I can't even remember his name. It escapes me. But the point is, we have to be careful if we're going to start a new party, because we as much as it sounds like a good idea, I don't know if it's going to have enough power to overcome the Republican Party right now. I think our best bet would be to not necessarily start a new one, but to restore the existing Republican Party. I know that's going to be a lot of work. I don't necessarily think it's gone, and the proof of that is, look how close Ted Cruz got. Ted Cruz was a true liberty-minded conservative individual, and he came in second out of 15 or 16 candidates. Mm-hmm. I think it's still possible to push through a constitutionalist using the Republican Party. I think right now that's our only vehicle, whether we like it or not.
So again, let's focus here on the future, because I just do not. Maybe now the GOP is the only vehicle to get one of our candidates into the White House. Yep. Now, again, I want to focus further into the future. I think that the millennial generation is currently being lost, and the brand of conservatism is old, stale, and they just don't think that it's contemporary and it has a place. Again, many of these people are drastically wrong in their interpretation, I will say, but this is the only side that they've ever seen to it, and it's confirmed with the candidacy of Donald Trump. So I'm concerned about 10 years down the road.
Sure.
And again, I don't even care about the party. I just want a revitalization of the principles. And whether or not we do that with inside the GOP, which I think, I just don't see a path. I mean, we have so many obstacles inside the establishment itself, and now the rise of a new movement inside our own party, the alt-right. It's pulling us apart even further, and in the process, we're embracing ideas that we have historically opposed. I mean, for example, just look at the no-fly list. Both Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, oh, by the way, and Obama, they all agree that if you're put on the no-fly list, you shouldn't be allowed to get a gun. This has even caused enough of a problem for me. I'm seeing the NRA starting to back off on this issue, which is the destruction is imminent to this entire system, not just the two-party system, but also to the principles.
I agree. And Mac, look, I'm not disagreeing with you that we do need to fix things within the Republican Party. Maybe the right way to say it would be this. I think we need a rebranding. I think it would be a mistake for us to get away from the Republican Party. I do. I know it's damaged. I know we have the alt-right rising up within the Republican Party. I know there are several different barriers that currently exist, and it's going to be hard as hell to break through. But we saw that with Reagan. When Reagan was running, he had a tough time breaking through.
That's true.
And it took him several different attempts to break through. It's never easy. There's always been these barriers. But the way I see it right now is as dysfunctional and even corrupt to a certain extent as the Republican Party is, and as many barriers that there are. It's our only vehicle as it exists to get in some guy that will actually care about liberty and actually care about the Constitution, care about our principles.
So if this
vehicle, looking down the line, I understand, and I know you're thinking about the future, and I totally understand that. And look, Mac, I'll say that if it was, I think if I thought it was feasible, I'd be completely for it. But I think even looking into the future, 10, 15 years from now, I don't think another party is going to have enough strength, enough momentum to overcome the Republican Party. I just don't see it happening anytime soon.
You made a fair point, by the way, about Ronald Reagan. You're right about that. I do. Look, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and whether or not we do it with inside the GOP or not, we do have to start taking a stand on principles. And my issue with continuing to use the GOP as a vehicle to get our guy into the White House is the fact that it's not a vehicle for our principles anymore, and I'm concerned that in the future this has only been progressing in one direction: statism. We haven't seen, though Donald Trump was very close to Ted Cruz in the primary and everything. I still see a major divide happening right now, and again, historical conservatives are now aligning themselves with the alt-right. Who, again, my idea is to get myself as far away from statists on both sides as possible, and try to again talk about the principles, focus on the principles and why they have worked, and it related to how we've been successful. Again, I don't want us to deviate from these principles, and I feel like if the vehicle that we're using no longer represents these principles, why are we continuing to use this vehicle?
Yeah, one thing that I will say is that if someone came along who's already extremely popular among the liberty movement, very, very consistent with their principles and their beliefs, someone like a Rand Paul or like a Ted Cruz, if they came along in for example, say the year 2020, assuming that, of course, Hillary Clinton won. If they came along in 2020 and said, look at everything you just said, look at the Republican Party is corrupt, they no longer support our principles. We saw that in 2016 with the nomination of Donald Trump. I am starting for example, Constitution Party. That might have the strength because it would be formed from someone who's already very, very prominent within the liberty movement. That might work. That might be very, very successful. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that? That was just an idea I want to throw out there.
Well, first of all, there is a Constitution Party.
Right.
Darryl Castle. Darryl Castle's running right now. I'm actually looking at him as a third-party option. Him and Evan McMullen. Anybody out there interested, feel free to look those guys up. There are people out there, and you're right. And I think that if it would take something like that, and moreover, I think if sitting GOP senators or congressmen decided, or women, by the way, decided to flip parties while they're sitting and go over to a new party, I mean, it could change the game. And this, again, you can consider me a revolutionary, but I'm for the revolution of thought, not for a political overthrow of our government. Because again, as I stated in the first hour, I happen to think that revolutions typically and historically always end in tyranny. America is the exception to that, and one of the reasons for that is because of why people came here in the first place, and because they had a revolution of thought. So, I do think that if a popular or infamous liberty-minded person like Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, hell, even a Ron Paul, if they decided to start a new party or switch to another party that is not corrupt as the GOP. Again, my concern too is also the party systems in and of itself. George Washington was right. These parties do divide us, and there's no real answer to that. You can't stop allowing people to associate. That violates the First Amendment. So, my biggest concern is to wake people up to the fact that these politicians, most of them are corrupt. Most of them should not be trusted, and you should be focused more about the principles than worshiping some person as a god for simply because they have an R or a D in front of their name.
There are two concerns that I have over the idea of a new party emerging. Let's say Ted Cruz or Rand Paul did start, called the American Party. First of all, we have to be careful. The more parties that we introduce, the more votes is going to split. I mean that's inevitable, and I think that would be at least initially, a very, very big problem, and it might even lead to the loss of some elections, at least at first.
I think we're headed there anyway, though.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. And the other thing, too, is that if we were to start this, it would have to be, we would need an individual leading it who would be able to make the case, not just for 1 year, not just for an election cycle, but I mean for years leading up to an actual presidential election, saying over and over and over again, clearly, that, look, the Republican Party is corrupt, the Republican Party doesn't represent our principles anymore. And another thing that would worry me, too, is that, even if we did start a principled, conservative Liberty Party that had some legs, how would we prevent it from eventually being overrun or overtaken by, for example, the alt-right? I mean, what steps would we take to prevent this new party from being taken over in the same way the Republican Party has been taken over?
You make a fair point. I don't know. I don't have all the answers, and if we have the kind of ability to block the alt-right in a new party, perhaps we do have the ability to take back the GOP from them in upcoming elections. I mean, again, it is all about momentum. So I'm less concerned again about the parties. I want us to get back to the principles, and my concern about the GOP as a party is less about the influence from the alt-right and more about the damage to the brand that Donald Trump and this election has done to conservatism, and how it has actually changed the way people think about it. So I mean I get your point, but I think that we're already dividing. This has already happened. The damage on that fact has been done. I mean, whether or not Donald Trump gets elected, the alt-right already does have plans, and this momentum in this movement is going to continue, I think, to grow. We're going to see a rise of nationalism here in America, and it's going to be, again, I think we're going to see a lot of conflict coming from the left and the right between Black Lives Matter and the alt-right. I think that we're headed to these kind of days, especially in light of the coming economic collapse. So, I don't know. I don't know what to do. All I know is that I'm ringing the alarm bells and saying, hey, things are going to be bad, and we really do need to be prepared to stand up for the principles and not the party, and stop carrying water for these politicians who don't represent, again, the values that you and I believe in.
I think, let me just say this. If Donald Trump were not a nominee in this election cycle, I think Ted Cruz would have easily walked away with it. I mean, you might call me biased, as I've been a Cruz supporter since really the beginning. I think he would have walked away with this. And the reason I think that is because the guy not only understood the Constitution, not only understood the threats of progressivism and statism, but he knew how to articulate it. He knew how to communicate that message. And look, those kinds of people out there who are interested in running for office are few and far between. But it's the Ted Cruzes out there, it's the Rand Pauls out there who give me hope. I'll give you a quick story here. My uncle, and look, nothing against my uncle. I love him to death. He's a great guy, but he's a Trump supporter. And I remember I was talking to him one day, and we were getting into several debates, about Donald Trump versus Ted Cruz. And he looked at me and he said, "Look, Jason, there's no doubt in my mind that Ted Cruz is the more conservative choice over Donald Trump. But," he said, "Donald Trump is the man for the guy or the man for the job right now." And I don't agree with that. I think the man for the job right now is someone who's liberty-minded, someone who wants to reestablish constitutional values, reestablish liberty in this country. I mean, it all it takes is to look at the problems. So we have a government, a leftist movement in this country who's gutting the Constitution, gutting liberty, gutting free enterprise, gutting our military. The solution to that isn't protectionism. It's not nationalism. It's not Donald Trump. It's a constitutionalist. And that's I think, Mac, I think honestly, it might sound like a cliche, but I think the more people like you and me who are speaking up and saying this very thing, the better off we are. You might call me an optimist, but that's just how I think. I think that it really comes down to we the people speaking up and taking this country back, bringing it back to our principles.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I want to be positive. It's been a long time since I've seen enough evidence to think we should be positive. I think that we should be prepared for some major hardships that are around the bend. I do believe that, when the system does reset, when the economy collapses, we will experience a reset. I don't know what that reset on the other side looks like, but I do know that the majority of freedom-loving Americans are going to survive. I do believe that, and I think that if as long as we do focus on the principles, not the party, and certainly not the people, we will be able to rebuild and start over. One question, and the final question I have for you, Jason. You mentioned if Donald Trump gets elected, we have to continue to hold his feet to the fire. But would you say that we're doing that now with the fact that we're supporting a guy who's supporting redistribution of wealth, single payer, massive economic stimulus, and anti-free market tariffs? Do you think that we're doing it now, and if you don't, why would you expect that we would do it in the future?
So your question is, do I think that we are not holding his feet to the fire now, effectively? Yeah, I mean,
do you think right now we're holding his feet to the fire, and if you do or don't, do you think that we'll do that in the future?
I don't think enough of us are. That's what it comes down to. I think you and me are, and we're doing our damn best to hold his feet to the fire. But we have so many people, Fox News, these different talking heads and so forth. These diehard Trump supporters who have websites and online blogs. These are people who are honestly like cultists, for lack of a better word. They really are. They bow down to anything Trump says. They're cheerleaders for Donald Trump. Anything the guy says and does, anything goes. I've been criticized before for calling out Donald Trump and for criticizing him and challenging him where he needs to be challenged. And I say, look, I'm not trying to drag this guy down. I'm trying to make sure he doesn't continue lurching to the left. The ones who are endlessly cheering for him, no matter what he says and does, those are the ones hurting him and hurting the country, quite frankly. Because, if Trump continues lurching to the left, well, they don't really care. It's continue bowing down to Trump and speak nothing bad of Donald Trump. I don't know. I just hope that if he does get elected, it would be tough to hold his feet to the fire. But again, it comes down to the idea that I personally believe he's better than Hillary Clinton. He will do less damage to the country than Hillary Clinton.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Jason Vely of youthrevolt.org. Will you come back sometime in the future and join us on here? I really had a lot of fun talking to you, man.
Mac, I would love to. The conversation just kind of flowed, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. I had a lot of fun, man. It was a really good time. And again, we don't see everything eye to eye, but like I said, for the most part, I do believe that you are a liberty-minded person, and I like the fact that we can have a reasonable conversation, and we're not, we can disagree, and we're not ripping each other apart and using ad hominem attacks and all that stuff. So thanks.
Hey,
thanks
Mac,
so much
we're going in the same direction. We're going in the same direction.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're turning the liberty of dial, the dial of liberty. There we go. But
that's it.
But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. One more time, youthrevolt.org. Check them out. The Jason Vely program. I really love his show. And again, thanks so much for joining me, Jason.
Mac, thank you so much. Anytime.
All right. Well, take it easy, bud. All right, folks, we're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, I want to do another deep dive here and focus and finish up this Donald Trump article here, Donald Trump and the American Crisis. Then I want to dive into more of our featured topics, talking about how HSBC is giving a red alert saying get ready for a severe fall in the stock market. I want to talk about the tensions between Russia and the United States, how they're escalating. Is war inevitable? And then focus on the leaked emails that are coming from Clinton, Obama, and George Soros as a result of WikiLeaks leaks. So anyway, we'll be right back after this break, folks. You don't want to go anywhere.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mac Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bear Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On The Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On The Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Jayson Vely. I really did. I like talking to fellow millennials. Again, I'm a graybeard millennial myself, but I like to talk to other millennials who are in the liberty game, the liberty movement, and see what they're talking about, see what they're thinking about, see what their insights are, because this is the future. The youth. YouthRevolt.org, by the way. It is the future. What they're thinking, what they're saying, what their impressions are is a reflection of what we're going to see 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And I think it does have some impact. I think we should be talking about the future. Again, I think that a lot of my Republican friends are focused on the now, the here, what's in front of them, the next hurdle to jump. Not thinking about what reaction will happen as a result of how they stride that hurdle. What will happen? How will the future change? What kind of dynamics will change as a result of what they're doing? Again, I argue that Donald Trump is doing irreparable damage to the conservative movement, the liberty movement, the brand of liberty. And because, as Jason articulated, Donald Trump is having an issue here articulating our message of liberty. Because, again, I don't believe that he is a conservative, so he's obviously not going to be able to articulate a conservative message. But we have to find a way to rebrand. Whether or not it's within a new party or within the GOP itself, I don't care. We do have to find a way to connect with millennials. We do have to find a way to talk about things on a moral level, make the moral argument. Because I do believe that's why candidates like Ted Cruz, by the way, was making moral arguments. And even Bernie Sanders was making moral arguments, just the opposing view, the Keynesian economic view, the big government moral argument, that the big government should step in and fix these problems, instead of the opposing argument that we make, how the free market and liberty-oriented policies are better. And not just in theory, but substantially better in fact. They have resulted in more production, more wealth, and less poverty. So We have to continue. We have to rebrand. We have to make liberty cool. We have to figure out how to do it. I don't know how to do it myself. I can only, I only have my own sphere of influence. But we have to work together to do this. Conservatism should be cool. Libertarianism should be really cool. And I think that most millennials nowadays are libertarians. They just don't know it yet. So I'm at a loss right now, other than trying to convince people within my sphere of influence, within the sound of my voice right now, that liberty is better than totalitarianism. Freedom is good. That should be an easy sell. How could someone argue that freedom is bad? It should be pretty easy to counter those arguments. So, what I want to convey to you, what I really hope that you'll do, is to talk to people in your life. Talk to them. Talk to your friends. Talk to your families. Talk to acquaintances. Talk to somebody sitting next to you on a bus. Talk to them about things like the non-aggression principle, by the way. Because again, when people talk to me, and I do try to check out a lot, and I will admit, I do try to check out from a lot of conversations about politics with people. Because it's a long conversation. I do a 3-hour show. I do a 3-hour show every week. It's a long conversation to really lay out the case for liberty. I've been laying out the case for 138 episodes here. And I'll continue to do so until someone stops me. But we do have to be more active, and not in their face. We have to come about it from not from an angle that is going to get them angry at us. Again, last week's conversation about civility, I am trying so hard to be nice. Trying so hard not to be snarky, not to be sarcastic, not to be outright rude or even angry, because I have a justifiable anger. I'm angry at the fact that so many people think it's okay to use force against people who aren't hurting anyone else. I'm angry about that. I'm angry that so many of my fellow countrymen are trying to abandon our principles, which have allowed us to become the nation we are today. And I'm also angry at people who make the supremacist argument, as some of my anarchist friends have made, that we are more advanced as a species now. That we don't need the government, or even to my leftist friends who think that we've advanced as a species more than human beings of the past, and we don't need to have a military, for example, or we don't need to worry about Russia or Iran or other foreign threats. Those are supremacist arguments, FYI. If somebody's making that argument to you, they are claiming that they are better in some way than people in the past. Let me just point out, we're not better. Our ideas of the past were better. Not all of them, though, by the way. Slavery, again, terrible idea. But the single greatest human achievement has been self-ownership, liberty, the free market, capitalism. These ideas are worth protecting. And to think that we're somehow, again, I don't believe that we're any better than any other generation. Human beings are human beings. And in fact, in many ways, we're probably worse human beings. We become more self-centered, more focused about our own self-interest, which there's nothing wrong with that. But when it totally consumes you, and you don't think about anyone else, you don't think about the impact of what you want to do is going to have on someone else as far as economic policy of redistribution of wealth. Again, the arguments I make to my friends who are statists, and when I try to convert people, it's not you should vote for Donald Trump. It's not you should be a Republican. Not you should even be a libertarian. They ask me what I am. I say I'm a libertarian. If they look confused, which most of them do, I typically say, well, let me boil it down in a nutshell. What is a libertarian? I'm a small L libertarian. That means I'm not affiliated with a party. I'm just have the philosophy. And my philosophy boils down to two essential points. You don't steal from other people, and you don't hurt other people. That's it. In a nutshell. And I have yet to, even with the grossest statist out there, I have yet to find one person that takes issue with that philosophy. So that says something. Again, this is an easy sell. If you get people to agree that hurting people and taking their things is immoral, no matter who does it, if you get people to agree that just because there's a majority of people in a room that think that they have a right to your property, that's still immoral for them to take your property by force. You expand that up to a larger segment, a larger sample. Let's say 1,000 people want your property now. I've used this time after time after time after time, and it has been effective at getting people to open their eyes to redistribution of wealth as being an immoral force. Immoral. You cannot possibly do something good if you have done something bad to get to that point. Again, I guess that does kind of contradict what I said about our history. We did have some bad things about our history, but we also had some good. But the point here is that the ends don't justify the means. Just because you're going to help somebody out who's poor, it's not okay if you rob Peter to pay Paul. So, I don't want to necessarily say that nothing good can come from something bad. Maybe I misspoke, but I do think that we ought to be very concerned about the means. How are we getting to where we want to be? How are we doing what we're doing? If it's immoral to not help the poor, how can it possibly be moral to steal from somebody in order to do that? Again, I don't believe that everything our founders did was moral, but we should learn from these things. We should be trying to be a more moral society, have a more moral government. And I don't think that necessarily religion is what dictates what is moral and what is not. I do believe that that Christianity, though, and the non-aggression principle could go hand in hand. A lot of people would disagree with it. But again, I think inside any religion there is extremism that wishes to force said religion upon other people. Again, that violates the non-aggression principle. But that's why I think that Christians and libertarians and conservatives, we're all natural allies. As long as you don't want to use force against anyone else, we can be allies. We can work together. So I digress. Let me go back to this article here. This is Donald Trump and the American Crisis by John Marini. This is on Claremont.org. We were reading this in the first hour. If you're not up to speed on where we left off here, go ahead and check in with the first hour of the episode if you're just tuning in. So anyway, the author continues here. He says, the public good, once thought to be a legacy of the best that had been inherited from the past, including the American founding, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution, is not easily defended politically because it has been undermined intellectually. The most controversial aspect of Trump's campaign, his slogan, Make America Great Again, goes to the heart of the problem. Trump's view presupposes that the old America was good and established the conditions for its greatness. Is this true? Or is America something to be ashamed of, as the protesters against Trump have insisted, having accepted the teaching of postmodern cultural intellectuals? Trump's defense of the old America goes unrecognized by conservatives, either because they have succumbed to the postmodern narrative or because Trump is unable to make the intellectual case for the old America. Thus, the intellectuals stand almost to a man against him. It is possible that the Trump phenomenon cannot be understood merely by trying to make sense of Trump himself. Rather, it is the seriousness of the need for Trump that must be understood in order to make sense of his candidacy. Those most likely to be receptive of Trump are those who believe America is in the midst of a great crisis in terms of its economy, its chaotic civil society, its political corruption, and the inability to defend any kind of tradition or way of life derived from that tradition because of the transformation of its culture by intellectual elites. Now, Obama did promise to fundamentally change America. We never wondered what Obama was fundamentally changing America to. This is me speaking now, by the way. Actually, we did. Many of us did wonder what he was doing, but most of his voters didn't. Again, this is almost the same. Make America great again. When was America great? Trump has not articulated that. What made America great? Trump has not articulated that. Again, it's one of these really catchy campaign slogans, but what does it mean? Where is this leading us to? The article continues. This sweeping cultural transformation occurred almost completely outside of the political process of mobilizing public opinion and political majorities. The American people themselves did not participate or consent to the wholesale undermining of their way of life, which government and bureaucracy helped to facilitate by undermining those institutions of civil society that were dependent upon a public defense of the old morality. This crisis, or this great crisis, has created the need for a Trump or someone like Trump, and only those who recognize it as a crisis can be receptive to his candidacy. To be clear, the seriousness of the need does not mean that the need can be satisfied, perhaps even by a Lincoln, let alone a Trump. Nonetheless, Trump has established his candidacy on the basis of an implicit understanding that America is in the midst of crisis. Those who oppose him deny the seriousness of the crisis and see Trump himself as the greater danger. Now, this is me speaking again. I don't deny the seriousness of the crisis. Again, we do have a corrupt political system. We have both sides that have an establishment, that have people vying for control of the political establishment within the party itself. Corruption has risen. Crony capitalism has sprung out of that. Government has grown. We have a federal leviathan now that has more influence on your daily life than ever before. They regulate literally everything that you come into contact with. The federal government, something that they gained the power to do through the Wickard v. Filburn case. It's an old New Deal era Supreme Court case. Gave the federal government to have great leeway on how they use the Commerce Clause. Now they can use a Commerce Clause on things. Again, remember, the Commerce Clause was intended to give Congress the ability to regulate trade that cross state lines, interstate commerce. Now they're regulating things that are not for trade, personal consumption, and that don't cross state lines, using the Commerce Clause. So yeah, the crisis is serious. I myself, I denounce Trump, but yet I am not denying the seriousness of the crisis. But I do see Trump himself as the greater danger, as this article articulates. It goes on. And here again, Trump's success will likely depend upon his ability to articulate the ground of a common good that is still rooted in the past, a common good established by a government that protects the rights of its citizens in a constitutional manner and establishes limits on the authority of government by demanding that the rule of law replace that of bureaucratic privilege and status. Sound like Hillary Clinton to me. Trump may or may not succeed in becoming president of the United States. All of those who have a stake in preserving Washington as it now exists are his enemies, and the public that is drawn to him is fickle. Much will depend upon the ability of the established order, which has authority and respectability on its side, to erode the trust that Trump has built with the constituency he has created. In any case, by the way, FYI, they are trying to erode that trust right now. The mainstream media, as Trump says, are actually attacking him in a biased way. And why is he surprised? This happens to every single Republican, every time. I mean, let's look back at Sarah Palin, how unfairly she was treated. Again, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Sarah Palin, but let's be honest. She was slandered in the news during that election. And Mitt Romney, he did not get a fair portrayal. Again, this has happened over and over and over to us. This is part of the game. If you're in the Republican Party, if you're on the side of liberty, just know that the left media is going to come after you unfairly, and they're going to do it in times that are not convenient for you, like the October surprises that we're seeing right now. The article continues. In any case, the need that brought Trump to the fore will not disappear with Trump's demise. I have been making this point as well. The alt-right, the anger that was a result of the alt-right, this movement is not going to go anywhere. I mean, we need to keep this in mind. The alt-right is here to stay, folks. What are they going to do? They're claiming that they're going to make efforts here, and unless Trump loses the election and there's a major blow and they can't keep this momentum going within the alt-right, which I think the momentum will still continue to grow. I think especially with a Hillary Clinton perpetuating the Obama administration policies and, again, continuing to grow the state, I think this alt-right movement will continue because, again, it all has stemmed from corruption of leadership within inside the GOP, which is not going to change, and media bias, and a feeling of disenfranchisement with inside this political system, feeling helpless, feeling like you are outside of the political system and your voice no longer matters, feeling like you do not have an identity politics group to identify with, which is why the need for Donald Trump and the alt-right is springing forth. It's not going to go anywhere, folks. The article continues. Few serious policy analysts took Trump seriously. Like the Soviet experts who did not foresee the collapse of the Soviet Union, policy experts have failed to anticipate or even detect the crisis of America. Trump's success has revealed that one of our fundamental tasks, a task he has addressed when no one else would, is the need for political rule to be reanimated in a way that allows public opinion, understood to arise in the creation of constitutional majorities, to establish the legitimacy of politics, FYI, something Donald Trump is not doing, policy and law in a manner compatible with the rule of law and the common good. That requires revitalizing the meaning of citizenship and reaffirming the sovereignty of the people and the nation. It also requires the restoration of the link between the people and the political branches of government so that both can become the defenders of the Constitution and the country. That was Claremont.org, an article titled Donald Trump and the American Crisis. A lot to chew on that. John Marini, he's the one that wrote that. Man, it gives a lot of foresight into what's to come. And again, this last paragraph here, I want to point out that I am not against nationalism. All right? I'm against extremes. Extreme nationalism, ultra-nationalism, as is the case with Russia, and has been the case with despots around the world. We should be nationalist insofar as we are considering ourselves all one people. We are the American people. And the reason why we're doing that is because we're a team. We're all working for the protection of each other's life, liberty, and property. The reason why we created a government is we wanted to put our backs together to protect that life, liberty, and property. So in some ways, we have to be nationalists if we ever want to keep territory, because there are people out there that want to do harm to us. There is a cancer inside the world known as Islam that literally wants to engulf the world. There are nations like Russia and China and North Korea and Iran and Cuba that want to continue to use force against other nations, take more territory in the sense of Russia and China, by the way. And they want to become hegemonic or dual hegemonic powers in the world. They want to be able to project force outward against other nations. And I argue that's the reason why we need to have a government which has a monopoly on force. This is, again, I've had many of these discussions. I think the monopoly on force should be strictly controlled by the people through self-funding, through voluntary exchanges, for the most part, the free market. But in the case of the military, I think that should be done on a state government level, a local government level, through militias. And, I think a federal Navy and Air Force is a good idea. Control our territory, borders, prevent foreign enemies from attacking us. This is the reason. And again, reaffirming our sovereignty as people of a nation. We are free individuals who've decided to come together to form a nation in order to protect the lives, liberty, and property of each other. What does it mean to be a citizen? What does it mean to have sovereignty? What does it mean to protect life, liberty, and property? We have to find a way to restore the link, as this author suggests, between the people and the political branches, make them more subjected to our will, but also, I think, reestablish limitations. We need to seriously attack in a metaphoric way, not a literal way, folks. Attack the mechanisms that allow the government to use force against the people, that allow the government to be corrupt, that give the incentive for companies to collude with the government to get special favors that benefit them, hurt individual people, and prevent any competition from arising in a market. If the government didn't have that power, we wouldn't see lobbyists. We wouldn't see people going to Washington to demand special favors because the government wouldn't have that ability. Again, I think this is the focus of where we need to be. We need to look at the future and how to reestablish this link and how to really take the fight to the government. Again, political movements be damned as far as I'm concerned. If we can manage to get enough people on our side to radically attack, metaphorically, these power structures, if we could get enough people to support voluntary taxes, which again I argue, even if I'm wrong, by the way, my anarchist friends should be happy. I argue that people will voluntarily fund things from the government that they want. If they want a military or police, they'll fund it. And I argue many people will fund that. And in many cases, I think that the free market will take over in some of those areas and many government functions. But I argue that government would still exist if it was voluntarily funded. We can disagree on that. We'll never know. But even if I'm wrong, my anarchist friends should be happy, because if I'm wrong and the government doesn't get funded, we don't have a government and it just goes away. And the beauty of it is a check and a balance against some kind of, let's say, armed group of men, an armed body of men, essentially a mafioso protection racket from springing up. This is honestly, in this case, this scenario I described, this is honestly my biggest concern about what could potentially happen. I do believe that there is a risk of a monopoly being created by, for example, let's say a private security company or even a mafia protection racket. Let's just say that they have a monopoly of force and a corporate monopoly in a region or even within the country. Let's just call it a region to go smaller scale. But I mean, it is entirely possible that one company could be providing private security for all Americans in this kind of scenario that I talk about. So I want to actually focus on that. I have a clip here I want to play from a YouTuber talking about monopolies in a libertarian society. So we'll be right back after this break, folks. When we come back, we're going to dive into that. Then I also want to get into our featured topics. The red alert coming from HSBC, talking about how we're going to see a severe fall in the stock market. Tensions between Russia and the U.S. escalating. Is war inevitable? And leaked emails from Clinton, Obama, and George Soros. You don't want to miss what's coming up next.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mac Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bear Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On The Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On The Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Woo! Welcome to the third hour. This is the overdrive hour. This is where we get to all the stuff that we didn't have an opportunity to get to. By the way, I made a bad choice today in wearing sweatpants here. I have my studio in my house, so I can come to my studio without being really well dressed from time to time. And right now I've made a mistake. It is hot. Man, it's hot in here. Things I do for liberty. I'm sweating like a woman of the night in church. All right, so we got some responses on Twitter. Ken on Twitter says, Graybeard Millennial, LOL. I'm about to celebrate my 25th anniversary of my 25th birthday. First of all, happy birthday, Ken. I wish you all the best. Mark on Twitter, he says, suddenly I'm remembering Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse, quote, be nice, unquote. He's got a clip of this. We'll go ahead and play the clip. I like when Mark sends us clips. Thanks, Mark.
This is a new double deuce. I put a lot of money and time into this. And to protect my investment, I've hired the best damn cooler in the business. From now on, he's in charge of all the bar business. What he says goes. Dalton?
Morgan, you're out of here.
What the fuck are you talking about?
You don't have the right temperament for the trade.
You asshole! What am I supposed to do?
Sorry about the language, folks. I didn't know there was going to be cursing. Okay, let me give you a synopsis of the scene because I happen to have seen this. He says, "Be nice," and I believe Mark is trying to relate this to me, saying that I'm having a hard time being nice. It's true, but this is a good idea. Look, we kill them with kindness. We have to rebrand. And I think it's important that we do so without being vulgar, and we do so without being mean. We can make people look foolish by pointing out their inconsistencies, their illogical nature. It pointing out that they're being unreasonable and that they want to use force against other people. We can make them feel foolish, but I don't think we do that by being mean. I think we can do that just by being logical and following a logical train of thought and pointing out inconsistencies and hypocrisies, essentially. So, by the way, thanks, Mark. I appreciate the video. I would play more of it, but there's cursing, and I'm trying to keep the show PG-13. But I digress. So let's go ahead and go into the alt-right a little bit here in the featured topics here. Some more. Again, I do think that the alt-right is not going to go away. Again, the alt-right is growing. And let me just give you an article here that I found here. This is the alt-right's Plan B. This is on OccidentalDissent.com. Again, not really a very mainstream website or anything, not something you can really read as gospel. But I will tell you that Donald Trump waging war on the GOP is going to have some reverberations here. So let's read the last little bit of this article here. By the way, the article is titled hashtag Never Down Ballot is the Alt-Right's Plan B. So the article goes on to say that the scorched earth landscape we have entered since last week, since Trump doesn't seem to have much of a chance to win at this point after hashtag Never Trump split the party to sink our candidate. That's the author's opinion. The alt-right has little choice but to make a strategic pivot to Plan B, which is maximizing the damage to the Republican Party. Maximizing the damage. This is, again, these are our own people trying to sink our ship. Sink this vehicle that we've been using for our principles. The article continues to say, walk into your voting booth, vote only for Trump, and either vote against or leave blank the space on your ballot for anyone who is never Trump. Personally, I am voting for Martha Roby's Democratic opponent in Alabama's 2nd District. I suggest you vote against any Never Trump turncoat in your state. After what these backstabbing traitors did to Trump on Saturday, we don't have any reason to vote for the likes of Paul Ryan, Mike Lee, oh my God, John McCain, and Kelly Ayotte. We've got to send a message to the GOP establishment that this hashtag Never Trump campaign will cost them our support on the Never Trump down ballot. When they wake up and realize that Never Trump will cost them the Senate, the House, and much else besides the money, will snuff it out. Okay. So this is a real movement here. I don't know how much steam this is going to get, but just keep this in mind, folks. The alt-right is a cancer inside our own party. Now, some of you may be considering yourself alt-right, may identify with this. And look, if you are not calling for the growth of government, we're on the same team. We are on the same team. If you're calling for destroying the GOP, look, the GOP is just a party. I care about the principles. Does the GOP even deserve to survive at this point? The fact that it's abandoned the principle, it's become Democrat light. And it has been that for such a long time. Perhaps in the future we'll be able to reinvigorate the party in 2020. Maybe some bold conservative will step up. Perhaps not. And perhaps it won't even matter because we've already done so much irreparable damage to our brand with millennials that it doesn't matter what our message is, we won't be heard. No one will listen to us. We'll become the first party, third party. This is a risk that we will take. The GOP could turn into the Whig Party. I argue we're on that path. I think now is the time to separate ourselves, to self-sort, if you will, from people. Again, Donald Trump has said he was going to expand the tent by bringing in Democrats to the GOP. I argue this is not a good idea unless we've made the moral argument, we've made the principled argument, and they want to join us because of our principles, not because we are now becoming more progressive. We're now becoming more left-leaning. We now start to abandon our principles and try to be more palatable to moderate voters. Again, I contribute the success that Ted Cruz had to his moral arguments and his principled arguments, principled stances. Again, and he lost. So, again, I think some of that was overshadowed by the anger coming from within inside the GOP as a result of Donald Trump and the alt-right. Will it work in the future? I don't know. But I can tell you right now, if Ted Cruz was the candidate, I believe he'd be winning by at least, 8 points. That's my thought process. I think Marco Rubio, even though I don't like him, I think he would be doing even better. I think he'd be double digits. And also, moreover, just to point out, I think if Austin Peterson was going up against these two candidates, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, I think we would see a real rise of libertarianism in this country. Maybe he wouldn't win. I think he could. I think if we're choosing between, steaming dog poop and dog poop on fire, people would choose another alternative. And I think we're going to see that this election. I'm not voting for either one of these candidates. I don't care what happens. I don't care if they put a gun to my head. I will never vote for a progressive. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to vote for a nationalist progressive. I'm not going to vote for a globalist progressive. I don't care what brand of progressivism you're trying to shove down my throat. I'm not going to vote for it. So, like many other Americans right now, I find myself in a position of having to look for an alternative option. I do believe Donald Trump will be worse for the liberty movement if he wins. Politically speaking, there will be some blame that will be put on us for the inevitable crash that is coming, and I do believe Donald Trump will stop kicking that can down the road. He will, in fact, instigate the collapse. Again, we have an Obama administration who's trying to hide the fact that our economy is on tilt. It's about to collapse. And he's about to hand it over to Hillary Clinton, who will try her damnedest to keep this thing afloat. And when it does collapse, they want to control the collapse. They want to make sure that they're not the ones to blame. They'll blame Russia. They'll blame terrorists. They'll blame any other exterior or interior event that they can. Anything to shift blame. But I don't think that's going to be effective, and we have too much information, too much access to information through the internet and social media to call them out on their lies. So I think that they will be held responsible. But I find myself now looking for a third candidate, a third-party candidate. And, I considered Gary Johnson, not anymore. He's not a libertarian in philosophy. He's statist in a lot of ways, unfortunately. The man has supported mandatory vaccinations. I don't know how anybody can make that distinction when you're pro-choice, as he is, to think that the government has a right to put something into your body. If the argument of being a pro-choice, as he is that women have a right to do with with their body what they want. So, if that's your argument, how can you support mandatory vaccinations? Okay. He's expressed support for a climate tax, a carbon tax, again, taxing carbon production when, first of all, that's anti-free market. Second of all, the debate is not settled. This entire assumption is based on the fact that carbon is increasing the temperature of the planet, and that it's a result of man-made production of carbon. Carbon dioxide, by the way, they use the word carbon to make it seem like it's dirtier than it really is. Carbon dioxide, I'm spewing it out right now, and so are you. And again, all of the computer models that base the changes of the environment based on carbon dioxide have been wrong. No scientist can tell you today how many parts per million you add into the atmosphere of carbon dioxide, how many degrees the Earth's temperature will rise. There's no correlation between that. They've had to cook the books on these numbers. That all the models have been wrong. All of their projections have been wrong. They have to keep changing the information in order to get the results that they want. This is completely in contrast to the scientific method. Again, Gary Johnson supports carbon taxes. Or he likes to refer to them as carbon fees. He's playing the same game that the Supreme Court made when they said that the government has a right to tax, they don't have a right to charge you fees or fines. So, again, it's just the reverse argument from that. Same argument, just reversed. And again, there's a lot of other reasons why I don't like Gary Johnson. Not as a person. I don't know the man. I think he's probably an honorable guy. But, his support for the TPP, it gives me major concern. Again, this is a global bureaucracy that's going to supersede our Constitution. I'm not a fan of that. And I don't think he would be if he fully understood it. But the fact that he has people in his camp that are saying that this is a good thing is cause for concern for me as well. So my vote, I find myself in this position where I have to decide between either a lesser of two evils between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and I contend that perhaps Donald Trump is not the lesser of two evils. I contend that he does damage to the brand of conservatism, as we've discussed earlier, to the liberty movement. He instigates this alt-right movement and will continue to grow its ranks. He has no loyalty to the GOP as far as the principles either, not just the party, but the principles, because he's been progressive his whole life. And he's a national socialist. He's a nationalist and spouting out socialist agendas. Okay, nationalist, socialist. Talked about wanting to turn the GOP into a workers' party. So that would be a nationalist, socialist workers' party. That's very concerning for me, considering that was the party of the Nazis. So, look, I'm not saying he's a Nazi. I'm just saying creating the same power structure, even if you don't have the same beliefs that Hitler believed, creating the same power structure, following the same path, wanting many of the same things, very concerning. Again, the whole Make America Great thing, what does that mean? What was great about America? You articulate those principles, please. When was this America great? Hope and change, everyone. Hope and change. So I argue that Donald Trump could potentially be worse. I don't know. I do know that Hillary's going to be terrible, but I also do know that the economy is going to come collapsing down. And with her being terrible, I want her to get the blame. So there's a potential here that Donald Trump is the worst of the two evils. I can't make that distinction. And if I wanted to play this politically calculating game, I could vote for Hillary Clinton in the hopes that Donald Trump would lose and Hillary Clinton would win, and then she would get all the blame. I'm not playing that calculated game, and I hope you aren't either. Which is why I hope you don't vote for Donald Trump. I mean I disagree with it, but hey, you're entitled to do what you want, man. Vote for whoever you want to vote for. I'm going to vote with my principles. And when it comes to Gary Johnson, by the way, who I wanted to give my vote to, I can't do it either without being calculated and saying, okay, well, he's the lesser of two evils, or three evils, really. He's the lesser of the evils of these candidates. He's not a perfect candidate, and he does have some major violations of the non-aggression principle and his open border policy does really, I think, undermine U.S. sovereignty and the whole idea of the TPP, this massively global trade deal that is going to give foreign bureaucrats authority over us and our laws and our Constitution. I think that's a risk. But maybe voting for him will give some legitimacy to the Libertarian Party. Maybe in the future, the Libertarian Party will be seen as more legitimate simply because I gave my vote. Look, I don't think that my vote amounts for that much, really. But I don't want my name attached to that. I'm not going to vote for the lesser of two evils. And again, I do believe that Gary Johnson is a good guy. He may be the least evil position or candidate that you could support out of those three, but there are other options. I think what I want to do this year, maybe I'll change my mind, I don't know, is to vote for just any third-party candidate. And I hope that you do the same. If you vote for someone else outside the mainstream, and if this election shows that more people are voting independent than ever before, it will be the largest rebuke against these two candidates, this two-party system as possible. And I do believe that people are capable of forming an opinion about more than just two candidates. I think people ought to be able to hear Gary Johnson on the stage debating. I think most of the parties. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with having some form of threshold. before somebody can get into the debate on the debate stage. Maybe even a limit to how many people can be on the stage at a time. I mean, hell, we had 17 GOP candidates in the primary. Why are we down to we narrowed the choices down to really 2 for the general? Why can't we have more than 2 people on a stage at a time? I think millennials are going to change that. I think millennials are, we're used to options. We're used to choices. We're used to being able to have 50 freaking choices of what kind of deli meat we want to put on our sandwich. How many phones that we can have. We're used to having unlimited choices. And I think that the millennials are going to rebuke this entire two-party system, which is why I argue it's time to abandon the GOP and get away from the alt-right. It's time to stand for principles and rally behind anybody who is calling for a restoration of the free market, individual sovereignty, constitutional limits placed upon the government, and the non-aggression principle. I think those are what we need to restore. Okay, so let's dive into some of our other featured topics here. First of all, let's go ahead and go into a Mac attack. We have to go into this because of the HSBC warning about the economy. Here we go.
It's time for the Mac Attack!
All right, so HSBC has announced a red alert. They are now concerned about a severe fall in the stock market. This is according to BusinessInsider.com, article written by Bob Bryan, October 12, 2016. HSBC's technical analysis team has thrown up the ultimate warning signal. In a note to clients released Wednesday, Murray Gunn, the head of technical analysis for HSBC, said he had become on red alert for an imminent sell-off in stocks given the price action over the last few weeks. Gunn uses a type of technical analysis called the Elliott wave principle, which tracks alternating patterns in the stock market to discern investors' behavior and possible next moves. In late September, Gunn said the stock market moves looked eerily similar to those just before the 1987 stock market crashed. Citi's Tom Fitzpatrick also highlighted the market's similarities to the 1987 crash just a few days ago. On September 30th, Gunn said stocks were under an orange alert as they looked to him as if they had topped out. And now, given the 200-point decline for the Dow on Tuesday, Gunn thinks the drop is here. With U.S. stock markets selling off aggressively on October 11th, we now issue a red alert, Gunn said in the note. The fall was broad-based, and the traders indexed showed intense selling pressure as the market moved to the lows of the day. The VIX index, VIX, a barometer of nervousness, has been making a series of highs and higher lows since August. Gunn said the selling would truly set in if the Dow Jones Industrial Average were to fall below 17,922, or if the S&P 500 were to dip under 2,116. The Dow closed at 18,128 on Tuesday, while the S&P settled at 21,036. So we are fractions away from these marked. Again, 17,922 is what he said we would see these. The Dow Jones average, we would see this instability, this VIX barometer of nervousness, 17,992, and the Dow closed at 18,000, so 18,121 or 128. So we're close. And the S&P, he said, if that were to fall 21,016. 2,116. We're at 2,136. Close. As long as these levels remain intact, the bulls still have a slight hope, Gunn said. But should those levels break and the markets close below, which now seems more likely, it would be a clear sign that the bears have taken over and are starting to feast. The possibility of a severe fall in the stock market is now very high. So, man, things are getting shaky here with the economy. We got some action on Twitter. Let's see what's going on here. Mark on Twitter said, sorry about the language. Patrick Swayze was telling the bouncers to be nice until he tells them not to. Okay. Hey, no worries, Mark. You're all good, bud. It's all love here. Ken also says, I'm considering voting for Trump because Hillary will start a civil war and cause bloodshed in my country. Matt, Gary Johnson is a nutcase. He continues. He says, Dems will steal the election in the cities. I still can't believe Obama won twice. He continues again. He says, after GWB won twice, Democrats, communists decided they aren't losing again. That's why they fight voter ID laws. Look, there absolutely is corruption when it comes and fraud when it comes to voter ID, voting. The only people who are dead that vote are Democrats. So that is a real problem that we're facing. And again, it's not an isolated instance. I challenge you now. Go Google voter fraud right now. Just Google it. Voter fraud. It's all over the place. You will see case after case after case of voter fraud in America. It's not an isolated thing. It happens all the time. So look, I'm not going to defend Gary Johnson, Ken. By the way, I happen to think he's probably a very honest man, but I think he's misguided in policy, and I think he violates the non-aggression principle with many of his stances. That's just my opinion. And again, if you disagree with me out there, I hope you guys don't take it personally. We can have disagreements. I'm looking at right now Darrell Castle of the Constitution Party, or Evan McMullin. He's running as an independent. I'm actually leaning. I disagree with Evan McMullin more than I do Darrell Castle, but I'm actually leaning towards him, namely because of what I'm seeing in Utah. He's not a perfect candidate, but I think he's actually a pretty good candidate. Mostly what I disagree with him on is immigration. He's willing to have the conversation now about what we do about people who are here legally, and things like that. So, personally, I don't think there should be any amnesty. I think that he's more inclined to think that there should be some, but I digress. That's not what we're talking about. But anyway, still haven't made up my mind. I don't know what I'm going to do. I found myself, for the first time, one of these undecided voters, and it sucks. Really, not happy about it. I'll be honest. Very upset about that. So, what else do we got on the docket here? Oh, some more, and again, some disturbing news. A firebombing attack on a GOP headquarters in North Carolina. This is a Republican headquarters. It was firebombed, and this is an article on Charlotte Observer, written by Jim Morrill. Let's see. In a tweet, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump blamed animals representing Hillary Clinton and Dems in North Carolina. We're dividing ourselves further. We're continuing to divide ourselves further. Hillsborough police said somebody threw a bottle of flammable liquid through a window of Orange County GOP's headquarters, setting campaign signs, supplies, and furniture ablaze before burning itself out. A swastika and Nazi Republicans "Get Out or Else" were spray painted on the side of the adjacent building. No damage estimates were available. So here's what we should take from this. The left is gearing up for violence. Black Lives Matter. The Marxist radicals in the bunch are gearing up for violence. Racial tensions, group dynamics are stoking up here between groups, inciting violence. I predict that we are not far from an alt-right retaliation. The alt-right is different from the Tea Party, folks. The alt-right is different from the GOP. The alt-right is different from the Liberty Movement. Not everybody in the alt-right is a racist. Not everybody in the alt-right belongs to the KKK. Not everyone is a Nazi in the alt-right, FYI. Just like within Black Lives Matter, not all of them are Marxists and racist against white people and advocate for violence. Not all of them. But in these two groups, there are a similarity. There's a common thread in that there are many useful idiots. Pardon me, it's not a term that I'm trying to use to be offensive. It is a term coined by Marx himself. People are being used by the organizers of these movements. And many of the organizers of these movements on the left are Marxist, on the right are National Socialists. I do believe that we will see retaliation coming in the future from the alt-right. There will be attacks against the left. I hope I'm wrong. Now more than ever, we have to come together. And I don't know how to do that other than focusing on principles and ringing the alarm bell of who not to associate yourself. Don't tie your cart to this horse, the alt-right. I warned you when Donald Trump got elected. I warned you then, and I'm warning you now. Do not get caught up on the anti-Donald Trump side, because I saw it. I know these people. These people are part of the Mayday radicals from the left, the Marxist ideologues in Black Lives Matter. I knew it was going to be taken over by them. The Never Trump, the protests against Trump. I knew it was going to be taken over by these guys. Just like I know, and I warned against you joining up with the pro-Donald Trump side, the alt-right, as it's now coined as. Because both are going to lead us down the same path, just a parallel path. Both of these sides are going to lead towards very, very bad things. So, we got 15 minutes left. Let's try to break down the rest of the featured topics. Tension between the U.S. and Russia are now escalating. We have a Russian official now telling students studying abroad, Russian students, to come back to the motherland. They're encouraging all of their Russian citizens to come back to Russia. Why would they be doing that, I ask you? I think they are gearing up for a war. I believe that they know what is around the bend, and now Russians are trying to convince people, relatives living abroad, to come back home. Here's an article written on abcnews.go.com, and it's going to play a clip here. I'm going to have to pause this here, but the article is titled 7 Ways Russia is Telling People to Prepare for War. All right, I paused the video. Cool. This article is written by Patrick Revel, dated October 14, 2016. So here's the 7 reasons. Beware the nuclear dimensions. As the confrontation between Russia and the United States has worsened over Syria, and amid speculation Washington might launch airstrikes against Syrian government forces, Russia's state-controlled media has gone into high gear asking Russians whether they are prepared for nuclear war. If that should one day happen, this is a quote, each of you must know where the nearest bomb shelter is. A report on state-controlled network NTV noted before taking viewers on a tour of a nuclear bunker near Moscow. State outlets already solidly anti-American in their coverage have unleashed themselves further, indulging in bitter denunciations of American duplicity, bombastic promises of merciless defenses, and freely banding the nuclear card. Okay, here's another one. They're checking gas masks. This month, Russia held a large-scale civil defense drill across the country meant to prepare people for disasters, among them nuclear catastrophe. The drill, which Russian authorities claimed affected 40 million people, and particularly the way it was presented on state television, resembled Soviet-era exercises with scenes of school children flooding out in evacuations and being taught to hurriedly pull on gas masks. Who's in charge here? Russia's defense ministry has announced how the country would function in a time of war, clarifying which government bodies would take command. The answer was largely it would take control of government offices, local administrations, and the police. the military simulated the scenario during a huge exercise in southern Russia. The sound of saber rattling. The maneuvers took on harder forms as well. This week, Russia deployed nuclear-capable missiles in Kaliningrad, its northern European enclave between Poland and Lithuania, that put the weapons within striking distance of Western capitals. Moscow has threatened before to deploy Iskander-M missiles and Kaliningrad in response. It says to the establishment of the U.S. anti-missile shield being erected in Eastern Europe. But this week's deployment came sooner than expected, with an analyst suggesting that that indicated that Kremlin wanted to play it as part of a broader saber-rattling display in the confrontation around Syria. Land and sea. Russia also conducted a series of intercontinental ballistic missile tests this week, launching 3 missiles in a single day. 2 of the nuclear-capable missiles were launched from submarines off Russia's Pacific coast, and a third was fired from an inland launch pad, RIA Novosti reported. What a catastrophe might look like. Still, despite the threats, the display has sometimes shown its seams. In the NTV report warning people to identify their nearest fallout shelter, the presenter interviewed a retired colonel, showing several possible scenarios of a catastrophe on a map. The map turned out to be a U.S. video game based on nuclear conflict. Every neighborhood needs a good bomb shelter. Most Russians don't take the war talk seriously, laughing off the idea on the street. Most take a more realistic view of whether there's actually a need for to find a bomb shelter. A photo being shared on social media showed an apartment block in suburban Moscow where pranksters or entrepreneurial fraudsters had posted a flyer asking residents to donate cash to build a neighborhood bomb shelter. Hurry, the flyer says. Places are limited. So those are some things that's happening in Russia that may be leading us towards a war. But here's something that I want to talk about. As these tensions are escalating, the U.S. has, as the name of this show is entailing today, the U.S. has declared cyberwar on Russia. Here is the clip.
Good evening. There will be no troop movements or a single shot fired, but NBC News has learned exclusively that the United States is poised for an unprecedented retaliatory assault against Russia in response to its interference in the U.S. election. Tonight, high-level U.S. intelligence sources are describing to us details of a CIA-led cyber retaliation against Russian computer systems. And it could get personal, targeting the Russian leadership from Vladimir Putin on down, who the U.S. accuses of sponsoring a series of hacks meant to undermine confidence in the American election. Senior investigative correspondent Cynthia McFadden has details.
NBC News has learned the CIA is in the initial phase of a wide-ranging cyber retaliation designed to be both clandestine and embarrassing. Sources with direct knowledge of the operation tell us the target, the Kremlin leadership, particularly Vladimir Putin. If ordered by the White House, the CIA could manipulate things as specific as the banking accounts and personal phones of the Kremlin leadership.
There's a great deal of offshore money that has moved out of Russia through the hands of oligarchs. It would be extremely embarrassing if that were revealed, and doing so would be a way to have a proportional response to what we have seen.
The covert operation, the sources tell NBC News, is being run by a super-secret group inside the CIA. Top-secret documents indicate they have a staff of hundreds and a budget in the hundreds of millions. The covert operation is designed to send Russia a signal to back off. How does it work? U.S. cyber operatives have long been active inside Russia itself, trying to unlock the cyber doors the Russians work hard to secure, feeding information back to CIA headquarters at Langley. Inside Langley, CIA super hackers use that information to direct drones and specialized low-flying satellites over Russia, and even submarines positioned off the Russian coasts. A former senior intelligence official tells NBC News he believes the U.S. response to the Russian hack should be overt for everybody to see, and that it should include a persuasion campaign designed to inform the Russian people about Putin.
If you publicly accuse someone and don't follow it up with a response action, that may weaken the credible threat of your response capability.
Sean Canuck was until this spring the senior U.S. intelligence official responsible for analyzing Russian cyber capabilities.
You're seeing it play out between two longtime chess players in this field. We've seen it in past decades in the nuclear era, and now we're seeing it in the cyber era.
Unless we stand up to this kind of cyber attack from Russia, we'll only see more and more of it in the future.
But tonight, while the CIA continues to lay the technical groundwork, we're being told that there are deep divisions at the top of the Obama administration about whether to proceed, and there are other options being considered. This mission cannot go forward without an order from the president. Lester?
Cynthia McFadden tonight. Cynthia, thank you.
I argue that this order will be coming. We are going to see boots in the ground in Syria. It's going to push us into a conflict, a hot war with Russia. By the way, if you want to get an insight into Vladimir Putin, who he is, what he's done, his background, this guy is not to be trifled with. Ex-KGB. He's a lawyer, by the way, went to law school, and managed to establish himself inside the criminal mafia of the Russian government. And that's exactly what it is. It's a kleptocracy. He's managed to amass a wealth of approximately about $40 billion, making him one of the richest men in the world, and also putting him at risk of being a target for the next regime. This is a problem with inside Russia. I went ahead and linked a documentary on Putin. It's called Rise to Power. I just watched it this week. I highly recommend, if you want to get a little bit more insight into Putin, his mindset, and the Russian oligarchs, I highly recommend checking it out. I shared it on my Facebook, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Shared it out on our group as well. By the way, if you're not in the group, join it. It's an excellent place for us to communicate. We can have all sorts of intellectual debates and conversations. It's all good stuff. Again, that's facebook.com/groups/OnTheMoveShow. Now, I promised you I'd get to some of the leaked emails. We don't have a lot of time, but let me just give you the cliff notes here of what we've learned as a result of WikiLeaks, or the Russian government's leaking emails from Clinton, Soros, Obama. So here's one article on theamericanmirror.com. I'll link it out on my Facebook page after the show. Leaked email shows George Soros urged Hillary Clinton to intervene in Albanian civil unrest. She did that as a result. She's also taken money from the billionaire. Leaked emails show Clinton campaign coordinating with Soros organization. Leaked emails show a memo from George Soros, refugee crisis, the new normal, and it gives them new opportunities for global influence. Again, I've been arguing that this man is part of the globalist agenda. Again, I don't think that there's a cabal of people working together for the same goals. They're working together to centralize power in order for them to exploit it and gain personally. George Soros is among them. I believe the Obama administration is also part of that. Moreover, I do believe Hillary Clinton is part of that. Furthermore, WikiLeaks emails are now revealing some of Hillary Clinton's Benghazi cover-up within their organization here. They had information. They had access to information. And they were trying to cover it up and figure out how to spin it. I will link all 4 of these articles. 3 of them come from the Daily Caller. 2 of them come from the Daily Caller. The other one comes from Conservative Outfitters, and another one comes from the American Mirror. I will share them on our Facebook page, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. And also on facebook.com/groups/OnTheMoveShow in our group. So please, if you're not in our group, please go ahead and join it. Also, if you've made it this far in the program, MacPack, you are the tip of the spear. Thank you so much for your continued support. I really appreciate it. And if you would share this show with your friends, even just 1 or 2 people, I would be much obliged. I would really appreciate it. It would help move the dial of liberty a little forward. Maybe you'll convince somebody. Maybe they'll tune in. Maybe we'll change their mind on something. Who knows? But anyway, we got to go. Let me first just say, don't forget to check out our website every Sunday, OnTheMoveShow.com. Check out our shop link on there. Lots of original merchandise for sale on there as well. Helps the program. Certainly would appreciate you purchasing something like that, like the iHeart Open Carry design, the Bear Arms design, lots of other designs as well. Check them out. OnTheMoveShow.com. Click the shop link. Tune in every Sunday for more liberty-oriented stuff, more topics that stimulate your mind. At OnTheMoveShow.com. You can follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow as well. Follow us there. I really would appreciate that. You'd be helping us significantly. Like us on Facebook.com. Follow us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. And subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.